Hey, no barking.
Finley.
Yeah, we're not hearing anybody.
Am I good? No, I'm getting reverb. Somebody else, one of you have your speaker on, okay.
Somebody has to speak on.
Okay.
Don't speak on.
Apologies for the technology. We didn't have a lot of money to spend on fancy technology, so we cobbled together what we could. We tested this twice and it does work, so just have a little patience. This is our first meeting to discuss the farm plan. The farm plan is probably the most significant undertaking in this township in 20 years. This is not going to be the only public hearing on the farm plan. This will be the first of several. But we were at the point where we wanted to present to the public this evening our progress so far and get input from the public as to their thoughts. For those of you who aren't used to township committee meetings, I'll introduce the people at the dais. As I said earlier, I'm Rick Wolf. I'm a member of the township committee. I'm the mayor of East Amwell. I'm also a member of the planning board of the Farmland and Open Space Preservation Committee. To my left, this way, we have Mark Castellano, who is the deputy mayor, a member of the township committee, and also a member of the planning board. To Mark's left is John Mills, who is a township committee member and a member of our, what committee do we have you on?
Agricultural.
Oh, right, agricultural. Off to John is Tim Willey, the chair of our planning board. And next to him is Mike Mills, who is the chair of our agricultural advisory committee, our farmland and open space preservation committee. He's also a member of our planning board, and he will be one of our three presenters this evening. To my right is Chris Sobieski, who is a member of the township committee and a member of our board of health. And off to his side is Tara Ramsey, who is a member of our township committee and also a member of our board of health. Sitting down there is Allison Castellano, who I want to thank for helping us cobble together this technology. Allison and another resident, Matt Miller, worked very hard on getting our technology up and running. And sitting down here is behind the TV screen is Krista Parsons, our acting clerk, and a whole host of other titles in East Amwell. Krista here.
Tara Ramsey.
Here.
Chris Sobieski.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Castellano.
Here.
And Mayor Wolf.
I'm here.
I'd like to call the planning board meeting to order, please. And we'll call Krista, please.
Tamara Lee. Mike Mills.
Here.
Natalie Nelson. Jackson Ryder. John Saramba. Jason Silverthorne. Marnie Stetson. Tim Willey.
Here.
Elena Gable, and Yolanta Maziar.
Chris, is there anybody from the planning board who isn't here yet?
No, they're all
Okay.
present.
Okay, terrific. Okay. We have a set order for tonight's meeting. We are going to start by having presentations from three of our colleagues, Mike Mills, Tamara Lee, and Elena Gable. After their presentations, we will then have the Township Committee and Planning Boards ask whatever questions they have of our three presenters. Once the Township Committee and Planning Board members ask their questions, we're going to open this up to the public. Each member of the public will have 5 minutes or up to 5 minutes to make comments or ask questions. The 5 minutes is your total time on the floor, which means if you ask questions, the time that it takes to answer those questions counts towards the 5 minutes. Because we have a lot of people on tonight, we have 57 so far on Zoom, and it looks like we have about 20 here in the room. And we want to give everybody who has questions or comments an opportunity to make them without having to wait until 3 o'clock in the morning. So we're going to limit people to 5 minutes. If you can't get all your comments in or have all your questions answered within the 5 minutes, you are welcome to submit comments to Krista by email for the record. You can also post questions by email. You can email Krista and Krista will get your question to the right person. Or you could attend a future Township Committee or Planning Board meeting where there are larger allowances of time to ask questions or make comments. We really do want to hear from the public. We want as much feedback as you're willing to give us, and we'll answer whatever questions you have. So please don't have any reservations at all to give feedback or ask questions, and don't take the 5-minute limit as an indication that we're not interested in getting the input. We really are. Decisions here tonight, decisions on the farm plan are going to be made by the public. Ultimately, it's the governing body that nominally will decide what direction we go in, but this is an issue for the residents, not really for us. So we are going to get as much feedback as we can from the residents, and we're going to act on that basis. After we are done with the open to the public session, it will come back to the Township Committee and Planning Board members to have any remaining discussion that they'd like to have. And then the hope is that at the end, the Township Committee will be giving direction to the Planning Board regarding what the Planning Board should be doing going forward. So with that little introduction, I'm going to turn this over to our three speakers tonight. Tamara Lee is going to be leading the charge in terms of the three presentations. So Tam, I'm going to turn this over to you and let you start the presentations. Please, everybody stay on mute that's at home. Please do not interrupt the presentations with questions. Please reserve your questions until the open to the public session. We want to let the three presenters get through their presentations because any questions you have may get answered either later in a particular person's presentation or by the next person who's making a presentation. So with that, we want to switch over the technology and let Tam take the floor.
Not him. Where's Pam? I gotta find her. Page one. Mm-mm. Here she is. I have to pass.
Okay, can everyone hear me? There we go. Okay. All right. So let me first explain how this project got started. There were some observations on the part of primarily some people on the Township Committee that it's not uncommon for us to experience conflicts within the community between residential homeowners and farmers. And oftentimes that happens because, you know, people come to East Amwell, they see how beautiful it is, they want to live in this lovely farming community. They move here not knowing that there are other aspects to farming that they hadn't anticipated. You know, when a farmer, you know, spreads manure over their fields to fertilize it, it doesn't smell all that great for a little while. They have long hours and they're using farm equipment, and that farm equipment, you know, makes noise, and that's not always the most convenient times. And sometimes you get stuck behind a slow tractor when you're late for work. So, you know, things like this have sometimes caused conflicts, and this sort of inherent conflict between residential development and farming is very common, not just here in East Amwell, it's everywhere. In fact, there was a very extensive study that was published last year by the American Farmland Trust. And it was a nationwide study, and it found that one of the single biggest threats to farming now is large lot residential zoning, because it interjects residential uses into farmland, and that's creating problems. It's creating more of these sorts of conflicts, but it's doing more than that. It's also fragmenting our farmland. It's making farms smaller. It's making them more irregularly shaped, which makes it more difficult to farm them, less efficient to farm them. So large lot residential zoning is really a problem for farming. And yet here in East Amwell, we have always prided ourselves on being a farm community. If you look back at our master plans, going back decades, we say what we want to be is a farming community. And we tried to reinforce that 20 years ago when we changed the zoning in the AVAD zone and went from 3 acres to 10 acres. And admittedly, that helped somewhat because it reduced the number of prospective houses that would be built. You're going to build less houses in the zone under 10 acres than under 3 acres. So maybe there's fewer conflicts, but it didn't fix all the problems. We're still losing our farms. They're still getting smaller. Our farmland is still being fragmented. So when some people started talking about whether or not we should change that 10 acres from 10 acre zoning to maybe 25 acres, that got people talking. And I'll tell you, I personally, when I heard that, said, if that's the only thing we're going to do, I can't support it, because it's not going to solve the problem. We're still going to be fragmenting farmland because we're still going to have a residential development. So we really have to do a lot more. Admittedly, we've done a lot of, we've experienced a lot of preservation. We've succeeded in that. More than 40% of the town is preserved in one fashion or another, but that wasn't through zoning. That was through investment. So that's helped, and that's created a great foundation on which we can build. But we now have to transition from farmland preservation, not that we're going to give it up, but we need to do more than that. And instead of just preserving farms, we now need to help farmers make farming economically sustainable long into the future. The vast majority of our local farmers have to have a second job in order to pay the bills. We need to make farming the land more profitable than subdividing it. So the goal of this project was to see what we could do as a community to help farming remain sustainable long into the future, because we have said for decades we want to continue to be a farming community. That's the kind of life we want, whether we're farmers or whether we're just people who appreciate living among farms. Because our farming has started to fragment, because our farmland is fragmenting, the nature of farming is changing. And and it's changing in response to the fact that farms are becoming more fragmented and smaller and less efficient. And so just because the nature of farming is changing does not mean that has to be a bad thing. There's actually a long history of farming changing in this state. You can go back hundreds of years. If you go back to the early 1800s, there were a much bigger portion of the New Jersey farm industry was involved in cattle farming, and they did beef farming. And that was a huge part of what was done here in New Jersey. But then in 1860, the federal government put railroads across the country. And now the huge farms out in the Midwest that had the room to have much bigger herds could get their cattle onto the trains with the cattle cars, drive them to the East Coast. And now our little cattle farms couldn't compete with the Midwest farmers anymore. So our farmers had to adapt. And they went to small livestock farming. And they started farming chickens and pigs. And that was great for a long time, until the 1950s, when the federal government took on a project to put interstate highways throughout the country. And now the bigger farms in the South that were doing chickens and pigs could send their product up to DC and Baltimore and New York and Washington and Boston. And then again, our little farmers here in New Jersey couldn't compete, so they had to change again. And that's when they moved more towards feed crop farming. And a lot of our more established farms here still do feed crop farming. But my point is that change isn't bad, and change doesn't mean that the farming of old is going to go away. In New Jersey, even here in East Amwell, we still have farmers that deal in beef and deal in pork and deal with chickens. And we will continue to have farmers who have feed crop farms, even as farming evolves. But it has to evolve because the fabric of our farmland is changing. The good thing is we can use that growing diversity and capitalize on that to make it better for everybody. And we're going to explain how we can do some of that and how we can work as a community to bring that about. So we've got 3 presentations for you tonight. Elena Gable, our township planner from Hire and Gruel, has done an extensive study of the current AVAD zone and the kind of development that has occurred in the last 10 years. She's going to talk about the kind of development that's happened. She's going to talk about the AVAD zone as it is now. And if we don't do anything, what is the township going to look like? And I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. Our AVAD zone is 10-acre housing. And if we don't do anything, we're going to get exactly what we zoned for. We're not going to have farms. We're going to have large lots with houses on them. After Elena, Mike Mills, as Rick said, colleague of mine on the planning board and also a local planner, is going to talk to us about the changing nature of farming and how it's going to evolve and the kind of new techniques and the new farming that are developing. And you're going to, it's not going to take long for us to show you how that new farming can adapt much more easily to the new conditions that we find ourselves in, because the farms are getting smaller and more fragmented. And then I'm going to come back and talk to you about what we can do as a community to support farmers better than what we're doing now. So then they no longer have to have a second job in order to pay the bills. They can just do farming. And this isn't just for them, because a lot of the residents who have moved here, we've moved here because we enjoy living in a farming community. And if we don't save the farms, if all we have is preserved land and not working farms, then we're just going to end up being a community of open space. And there's not a whole lot of sweet corn and fresh eggs in just plain open space. So to preserve the kind of quality of life that we've come to expect here, we need to help the farmers be more profitable and do more successful and more sustainable farming. So that's what this project is all about. And it's a big project. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elena so she can explain to you where we are now and where we've been. So Elena, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Tamara. I appreciate that lovely introduction. Hi, everybody. My name is Elena Gable. I work for Higher Grohl and Associates, and I am your township planner. As Tamara said, we had done a very thorough analysis of the existing agricultural valley, the Amwell Valley Agricultural District. Krista, can you allow me to share my screen? There we go. Great. All right, can everybody see my my PowerPoint? Okay, great. So we prepared an analysis of the Amwell Valley Agricultural District. And so for the introduction, so the purpose of the AVAD zone is really to preserve and protect farmland and farming in the township. The township has identified 8 purposes within the ordinance. And so real briefly, the AVAD is to encourage land use patterns and development which enhance the township, county, and state efforts to retain farmland, protect and promote farming, to protect prime farmland soils, limit non-farm related residential development, preserve existing operations and limit conflicts, impose lot suitability requirements to accommodate well and septic systems when permitted, and to implement the goals of the amended master plan for the Amwell Valley Agricultural Zone. So part of this analysis, we analyze what is your existing land use within the zone. And so one of the things to note is that the AVAD is the largest zone in the township, and that the majority of the zone is over 8,100 acres of farmland, which is pretty good considering it is a farming zone. However, the second largest land use in terms of acreage is residential uses at over 1,800 acres. So I prepared this chart as part of our analysis, which looks at not just the acreage of each of these land use classes, but also the number of parcels as identified in the township's tax assessment records. And so this map here shows the existing land uses of the zone. As similar to that of the chart, the majority of the area is dark green, which is the qualified farmland. There are many residential properties, most of which front along the roads of the township. And also, as you can tell, that white grid-looking pattern are the preserved land areas within this zone. And so, as you can see, the township has done a pretty good job at preserving farms and also open space areas as well. And so this leads us to the preserved land. The township has been proactive in preserving land. Over 5,300 acres would have been preserved, which is nearly half of all the land in the zone. More than 4,500 acres are preserved as farmland and therefore need to be maintained as farmland and used as farms and farmland, whereas about 830 acres have been preserved as open space, which provides other environmental functions. And so we also looked at the environmental constraints in this zone. So this zone has floodplains, wetlands, surface water, and also slopes greater than 12%. We looked at these specific environmental constraints based upon the township's existing ordinance. So the ordinance has a lot suitability requirement, which is required for all new subdivisions that occur in this zone. I provided the definition on this slide, but essentially, you're required to have 22,500 square feet of unconstrained area so that you can have your building, well, and septic system. And then the township further defines the unconstrained land area as the area of a tract or parcel of land that does not contain floodplains, wetlands, or slopes greater than 12%. And so within the district, there's over 2,200 acres of environmentally constrained land. This map shows you where the environmental constraints are located, not just for the AVAD, but also for the entire township. As shown, the two major environmental constraints are the 100-year floodplain and also slopes greater than 12%. There are some wetlands within the zone and also some surface water bodies and streams that also are naturally occurring in the township. So we also looked at the soils and the farmland compatibility of those soils. And so the NRCS, which is the Natural Resource Conservation Service, they define soils based upon the farmland compatibility. Within East Amwell and in the AVAD specifically, there are 4 different types of farmland soils. The first is the prime farmland soil. This is the really good soil that you can pretty much grow all kinds of food, feed, forage, fiber, oilseed crops. It has really excellent physical and chemical characteristics. This is the best farmland you could possibly get, the best soil for growing crops. There's also farmland of statewide importance in the AVAD. This is land that does not meet the criteria for prime, but it still, provides pretty good crops, pretty good turnaround for crops, and it's also, it's encouraged to be protected as well. And then we have farmland of statewide importance if drained. This is similar to the statewide importance, however, only if it's drained. And then we have your not prime farmland, which are the soils that lack physical and chemical properties that allow the agricultural crops to survive. And so over 80% of the township is either prime farmland or statewide importance. There's some not prime farmland within the township, but and specifically within the AVAD. And so I'm going to show you on this map where these farmland soils are located in the township. Most of the not prime farmland occurs along where some of the environmental constraints are, so including the floodplains and the steep slopes. But as you can see, the majority of this zone is made to be, an agricultural district. So it's also, as part of this analysis, we looked at the individual lot sizes of all the lots within the district. And we even, did a secondary analysis of the unpreserved lots in the zone. Since there are very few unpreserved large parcels, remaining in the township, it's important that, these parcels are, tried to be protected and retained as farmland to keep the agricultural integrity of the zone. In addition, there are also many existing smaller lots that are undersized for the zone. These two charts here show, what all of the lots in this district have, and also what the unpreserved lots have. And so this is the map that, breaks down the lot sizes of all the parcels in the zone. The yellow are less than 10 acres, and then we have 10 to 19.9 acres, and then so on and so forth, going all the way up to greater than 200 acres, which there are 2 of in the district. And so because there were so many undersized lots, I wondered what are the uses of these undersized lots? And the ordinance also includes a provision for grandfathered undersized lots. So there are 819 existing undersized lots in the zone. Most of these undersized lots are greater than 1.5 acres, and the majority of them are residential. Over 75% of all the undersized lot area is residential, and over 80% of the actual lots itself are residential uses. And so this map shows the undersized lots analysis and their geographic location in the township. Some of the very small lots, including those that are less than 1/2 acre, are very hard to see since they're so small that it's difficult they're not shown at this scale. And so one of the other things we did in analyzing the zone is we performed a build-out analysis. And so this slide kind of shows some of the background information and assumptions that we used when conducting the build-out. So one of the things that we excluded properties under public ownership, whether they were owned by the county, township, state, or board of education. Adjacent properties under common ownership were treated as one single site. Properties assessed for tax assessment records as any other use besides single family, besides residential, were assumed to be developed at some point in the future as residential. We also excluded the preserved properties since they are not able to be developed any further than existing. And we also looked at the gross lot area of each of the individual sites. And so the zoning ordinance has 4 existing zoning standards for this zone. We have our conventional zoning option, the lot size averaging options, open lands ratio, and the 50-acre deed restriction option. I'm going to go through each of these standards in the following slides. So we have our conventional zoning. So the conventional zoning permits 10-acre lots. So you can have a 20-acre lot subdivided in half and get 2 10-acre lots. And so the 20 acres is the minimum required acreage in order to subdivide to produce a second lot. So within the existing AVED, there are 46 sites capable of being subdivided into 224 conforming 10-acre lots. And so based upon the calculations and these numbers, the full build out of this zone would include over 1,000 single family dwellings. And so this chart, this map shows which properties are able to be subdivided and which are undersized or conforming, but would be able to be developed with a single family home using the township's ordinance's existing grandfathered lot provisions. As shown, many of the larger tracts of land are able to be subdivided in upwards of 29 10-acre lots, whereas many of the existing smaller lots would be able to be developed with a single family home. So those were assigned 1 unit. Also, as shown, the preserved land areas were not included in this calculation as they are preserved and cannot be touched any longer. So the second option we have in the zoning ordinance is the lot size averaging option. The intent of this option is to promote larger parcels for agricultural uses and to encourage and promote flexibility, economy, and environmental soundness in subdivision layout and design. So what this option allows you to do is that it allows you to shrink the actual lot area to be a minimum of 1.5 acres using the density of 1 unit per 10 acres. So this option essentially allows you to keep 1 large lot or 2 large lots and also subdivide several smaller lots off of that. Since the density for the lot size averaging option is the same as the conventional zoning option, it results in a similar build out of over 1,000 single family dwellings. However, it should be noted that there is no requirement to preserve land areas as a result of the lot size reduction. So you very well under this option could get several 12-acre lots instead of all 10-acre lots. And so the only requirement is that all lots created need to be deed restricted against further subdivision. And so this map is the same as the conventional zoning map. Since the densities remain the same, it results in the same amount of new units. And so the next option is the open lands ratio option. This option is most closely related to that of a cluster development. I have provided a definition of a cluster development from a reliable planning handbook that I have. And so this zoning alternative is intended to promote retention of large farm tracts and the aggregation of smaller farm parcels through granting density incentives to those who qualify. And so these are the standards that are currently existing in the township's ordinance. And so as part of this option, it offers a density bonus in return for preserving 75% of the total tract area. So instead of it being 1 unit per 10 acres, it's actually 2 units per 15 acres. And in order to produce the minimum required 10-acre open space land lot, a minimum tract size of 13.3 acres is required. And so based upon our analysis, 80 sites meet this requirement. However, over 2,200 acres would be preserved as the open space or farmland preservation lot. However, because of the density bonus, a maximum of 417 single-family lots could be subdivided under this option. And so the full build out of this zone results in over 1,200 single-family residences. And so this map shows which lots qualify for this option and which are existing undersized. The light yellow color are those lots that are undersized existing that were given a value of 1 for single family homes due to the grandfather lots provision, whereas some of the larger tracts and those greater than 13 acres were assigned their subdivision number accordingly to the gross lot size of those tracts. And so our last option we have is the 50-acre deed restriction option. This is another option in the township's existing ordinance. This standard essentially allows you to, as long as you have a lot greater than 52 acres, you can subdivide 2 lots off of that while preserving the 50-acre tract. So you need a minimum tract area, 51.5. That gives you 1.5 acre residential lot while preserving the remaining 50 acres. 15 sites in the township qualify for this option, and a total of 29 new residential dwellings could be created under this zoning standard. However, over 1,500 acres would also be preserved, and so the full build out of this option is 868 single family lots. And so this map shows those lots are in light yellow or those that are under the 51.5 acre standard. The orange lot, there's only one of those. That is one that is capable of subdividing 1 residential lot. And the green color are those lots that would be capable of subdividing 2 residential lots. And so our summary of the build out. This chart, which is also included in my report, shows that there are 705 existing single family dwelling units, and this is based off of the tax assessment records for the zone. As you can see, the open lands ratio option produces the most units due to the increase in density. However, it also preserves the most land as a result of the subdivision process. The 50-acre option produces the least amount of units and also preserves some land. And so, as also part of this analysis, we reviewed development trends. As Tamara had mentioned previously, that the zone was rezoned in 2000 to permit single family residential on 10-acre lots, where before it was permitted on 3-acre lots. Your 2013 master plan reexamination report noted that minor subdivisions continue to fragment the agricultural landscape and resources, which is apparent when looking at those maps I showed you before, how all the smaller lots front on the roads, which the majority of are residential. So as part of this analysis, we reviewed building permit data from DCA going back 10 years. And we reviewed the building permit data for the entire township. As shown in the chart, the highest number of units was added in 2015 when 14 new structures were built. 12 of those were a result of a multifamily development that was approved. We also looked at the last 10 years of planning board resolutions, approvals and denials for the zone. 15 applications across 10 properties were for properties located in this zone. And as indicated by the master plan re-exam, with minor subdivisions fragmenting the landscape, 2 of these applications involved minor subdivision activity. There are also several bulk variance applications having to do with single family homes. And there was also some that were regarding solar panel arrays and also agricultural uses as well. And so the conclusion, of my analysis. So as shown by all of the above that I have said, development continues to occur in the AVAD, of which not all of it is farming related. Also, the optional zoning standards that have the intent of preserving the large tracts of farmland have not been utilized, and especially not within the last 10 years. Each of the build-out scenarios indicate that the large tracts of farmland may be subdivided, which is going to further fragment the township's agricultural land's viability and impact the rural characteristics of the townships. The resulting build-out assessment shows that up to 516 additional single-family dwellings could be built based upon the existing zoning standards. I also wanted to note that the township has been proactive in preserving farmland and should continue to aggressively preserve the larger tracts of land through municipal, county, and state programs for farmland preservation. And my last conclusion is that, the township should consider developing new zoning standards that focus on sustaining, preserving, and to the extent practical, improving farming within the township as a means to maintain the viability of farming within the district. And so that concludes my presentation for you this evening. And so I am now going to pass the mic, so to speak, on to Mike Mills.
Okay. My sound is off. All right.
Better? Well, thank you, Elena. That was very impressive. I kind of wish I'd gone first. You set the bar very high there. My name is Mike Mills. I'm a local farmer here. I farm on Wartsville Road. On my second year there, I'm building a diversified farm. So that includes a large amount of things. So I can say we have a few hundred fruit trees, a few nut trees. We're working on a large planting of native plants. We've included a tremendous amount of earthworks and other working with the property to manage water and help create a really great ecosystem to bring all these things together. On top of that, we have about 1 acre of high intensity vegetable and fruit production. So we're really trying to build a diversified farm there. I think that with using our farm, we can really build out a good example of what can be used elsewhere in the community. So I can do that better by in practice and showing you how to farm versus a presentation. But so it's important to think about New Jersey farmland as a whole. And through the years, through the early 80s and early 90s, farming was decreasing tremendously in New Jersey, primarily due to increase in population and a lot of development pressures. That decrease slowed into the 90s and 2000s, primarily through smart growth initiatives and support from local and state agencies in their large development and conservation efforts. So with that, there's actually been a net increase of farmlands since the early 2000s. So that's something that's very good to think about. And with that, there's been a larger increase of smaller farms, and that might be one of the driving factors for an increase of farmland. Land that was not necessarily farmland is now farmland assessment to the farmland. So many of, so another thing to consider then is urban agriculture. A lot of the areas of high density, it's not very important in terms of acreage, but it's just important in the terms of new farms coming about, and that's happening in some of the urban areas on very small micro farms. Okay, move over to the current state of agriculture. So most production agriculture in New Jersey hasn't really changed much. These are typically large-scale conventional farm operations.
Mike, we're getting emails that people can't hear you at home clearly. Should we either turn up the volume here or?
They need to turn their own volume up. as well.
Okay.
They
I
can
could
turn
speak
their
a
own-
little louder. I think it's
Okay.
just the mic is over there.
Anyone turn their own volume up.
Okay.
It would be best if people at home turn their own volume up as well.
Is the mic a remote thing or is it just a laptop?
So I was saying that most production agriculture has remained unchanged. You have these large-scale conventional farm operations. They're primarily generational. You're onto the third and fourth generation of these farms. Not a very large amount of employees, maybe some seasonal labor, large equipment. These farms are primarily occurring across property boundary and not the topography. In these properties, many of the farmers are reaching retirement age. They are still getting notices. Sorry. Many of the farmers are reaching retirement age now, so maybe they don't have children to take on their operation, or maybe the children aren't interested. So there's these large farms that are basically becoming available. And I believe that we're really on the cusp of one of the largest exchanges of land ownership in the state when it comes to farmland. I'm sorry, I never changed my slide.
Don't the mics work? Somebody turn the microphones on so we can hear better?
Sorry, I'm not speaking here. I'm going on my internet here. That's odd. Okay. So, all right. So I was saying that we're on the largest, the cusp of the largest exchange of farm ownership. So with that, we're going to need to find ways to actively and properly manage that land. Okay. So now with the public, we're seeing a trend to a growing health consciousness. People are desiring these locally sourced organic products. There's been a big growth in community supported agriculture, and that's nothing new. It's just, one of those things that we really need to rely on to bring agriculture forward. The whole Know Your Farmer movement, I think that's important, that people are coming out to your farms, knowing your farmer. Okay.
See if that helps. So
Try that. Okay. Like I said, I like to farm more than do these things. Okay, so I was saying so these pick your own operations is another thing that's been tremendously attractive to farmers. That's something that is interesting in the trend. I've even seen people renting out trees as a new option where people can come and, basically purchase their tree for the year. They can come and harvest, and that's their tree, and they might get up to, like, say, 50 pounds of a particular crop. So with all these developing trends, why aren't many people farming? So, well, farming is not easy. There's high costs of land in New Jersey, high equipment costs, and it's a lot of work. Access to labor is is hard, and the cost of labor is constantly increasing. And land leases can never, are not always the easiest thing to work out. They don't necessarily let you develop the land and move forward with that after the lease expires. So some people might not be interested in getting into a lease. So what can we do? And how can we make this a little bit more accessible? We have some beginner farmer programs in the state. I personally was involved with the NOFA Beginner Farmer Program, and that's kind of what really got me interested in farming to begin with, so that's a great opportunity there. There are some farmer incubators. NOFA had a program at Duke Farms that was very successful. We can work with existing organizations and networks. And volunteer opportunities are another great option. So having people work with you, learning from them. I've learned a ton from volunteers at my farm, and I've learned a ton volunteering on other people's farms. Continued education and sharing of information is really important. And experience. If you can get some experience working at other people's farms one way or another, it's definitely a great way to get into it. So new and newer farming methods. Many have heard of the no-till, and that's kind of a sore topic, I think, in this area. But so no-till involves the use of cover crops and rotational grazing and things, and removing the plows and soil disrupting tools to create a long-term healthy soil. And that kind of leads into regenerative agriculture. In regenerative agriculture, we want to really change the paradigm. We want to think about creating a healthy soil ecology, healthy ecosystem, increasing biodiversity, working with the land to let it produce versus working, almost against the land, trying to make it do what you want it to do. Some other things in new farming is the year-round growing, extending the season with structures like high tunnels and low tunnels, creating new opportunities in the off seasons is a great way to extend your, is another opportunity for farming. And winter production, you can actually keep these houses as well. Something else to think about is indoor and vertical growing. These are like the innovations that you hear in agriculture. Aquaponics is another, sorry. Again, this is not my expertise here. And then a lot of farmers now are creating, these unified site plans and maps, and using some of the technologies to help them create plans for their farms. So when you look at regenerative agriculture,
Do you want me to see if I can pull it up on my email?
Yeah,
And I
that's,
know
I
it might-
don't know, maybe the internet isn't working.
How many more slides do you have?
Just two more.
Okay.
This is kind of important. So this slide that you can't see speaks to regenerative agriculture, and it's a comparison between conventional and regenerative practices, where conventional agriculture competes with nature, trying to force certain crops, certain moisture contents, such. Regenerative agriculture partners with nature, where conventional agriculture might disturb soils, regenerative agriculture protects soils. So we're creating these root masses and these cover crops that will hold moisture and act as mulches. In conventional agriculture, we look at a monoculture, where you have large-scale individual crops. In regenerative agriculture, we look at diversity with multiple crops helping each other. working with each other to drive the biodiversity and ecology. Conventional agriculture looks at it as a reductionist, where you look at your inputs and your yields. Whereas regenerative agriculture looks at it as a holistic approach, where you're not just having inputs of fertilizers and such, you're having so the holistic is looking at everything together, all these systems working together in a balance. Okay, so some popular topics in agriculture. I'm not necessarily interested in these, but these are just some of the newer emerging topics and maybe some older ones. But microgreens, you see this a lot of season extension farms can do these things, and we've had many microgreens for years with say sprouts, but now we're doing some high nutrient dense sprouts. There's a growing interest for hops. Rutgers has done some research in the different types of hops, and I think that's going to be an important aspect coming forward. Hemp is always interesting. A lot of specialized equipment and such, but there's definitely going to be some interesting things happening in hemp, as well as cannabis. Something you see a lot of, and this is for many years, but it's growing more and more, is agritourism. And that also, speaks to wineries, breweries, and cideries and such. So now what I really like to talk about is my utopia, what I see in moving forward in farming in this region. I see large-scale regional farm planning, so county groups, state groups working together, creating a plan where farms can be unified in their operations, share resources, share not just land resources, but tool resources. I see a growing interest in small farm planning, where we can create a framework for some of these small farms to work together and help each other to do high value, high intensity crops. I want to focus on regenerative practices where we're creating a large scale biodiversity and really working to rebuild some of the ecology that was lost through conventional agriculture. I'd like to have a mix of intensive and passive practices. So intensive practices being some of these market gardens or market gardens mixed with other things like field crops and rotational grazing and such. I like the concept of a regional level rotational grazing where people can share animals across large acreages and move them across the fields in appropriate timings. I'd like to have an optimized market, and some of these farmers markets that we're having now are very competitive to get into, and they're going to be saturated, so we're going to need other ways to distribute some of the goods that we produce. I'd love to see community participation wherever possible. Having people come in and doing gleanings and things like that. And I'd love to have continued support from the agencies, the Department of Agriculture, the USDA, the NRCS, CADP, et cetera, in creating some of these systems and some of these policies that will help us move this forward easily. And then perhaps we can even develop an AMP for food forest system or passive systems. Ultimately, it'd be great to have a nonprofit run all this, employing the idea of NJ Crop, which is New Jersey Center for Regenerative and Organic Practices. I really liked the Center for Regenerative Agriculture Practices, but I don't think NJ Crop sounded very good. So what's next? We need continued outreach and public engagement and events like this. Regional farm plans, cluster farming. So where Cam was talking about cluster, Elena was talking about cluster development. Some of these farms can be designed in such ways that they can work together to share resources. We need to think better about farm housing and seasonal farm labor housing. Maybe even make some arrangements for tiny houses or for recreational vehicles to be used temporarily for these places. We just need increased collaboration. So we want people to get involved, find your local agencies, find your county agencies. This weekend is the NOFA, the Northeast Organic Farming Association's Winter Conference, virtually, unfortunately, but it's a great resource for new and aspiring farmers as well as virgin farmers. And then I just have a few links and resources to some of the information I provided. So I look forward to answering any questions anyone has at the end of this. So with that, I'll pass it on to Tam.
Okay, I'm back. Thank you, Mike. Clearly, Mike showed very clearly how the nature of farming is changing. And as I said earlier, that's due in no small part to the fact that the fabric of the farmland is changing because it's becoming more fragmented and farms are becoming smaller. So I've got to share my screen now. And does everybody see that? I don't think so. Everyone's got that, Krista?
Yes.
Okay, great. So where do we go from here? Again, the objective of what we're trying to do is to make sure farming is more economically sustainable long into the future, so that farmers don't need to have a second job, so that all they really need to do is farm, and so that we residents who are not farmers can continue to enjoy all the things that we love about living in a farming community. Elena has explained to us the problems with the existing farming planning that we have now. Our current zoning is really not working to preserve those working farms. It was probably the best that could have been done at the time. And so I really don't want to criticize that, but it's also clearly not enough. It's producing more housing, which creates more conflicts and creates more fragmentation, and that's not helpful. On the other hand, the fact that farming is changing and it is adapting, and it can be adapted to the new fabric that we have in terms of the pattern of farmland that we have with the smaller farms, the more irregularly shaped farms, we can make that all work to our advantage if we do it right. But we need new initiatives. And for that, we started talking with farmers. We started listening to their ideas. If they didn't have ideas, we started listening to what some of their problems were so that maybe we could come up with some ideas. And what we figured out was we really need a much more comprehensive planning solution than what we have now, because large lot zoning is just not going to create economically viable farms long into the future. And comprehensive planning really has a couple of components. One of it is integrated planning. So I'm going to go through a list of various different initiatives that we've come up with. It's just some of the initiatives. It's not our complete list. And I want to stress the fact it's not the end of the list. The more we work on this project, and tonight the project is really going public, and I expect to get more ideas from the public as more people in the public get involved. That list of initiatives is going to grow, but we need to do a lot more than what we're doing now. And all of those initiatives have to be integrated, and they have to fit together. They have to work together and support each other if our farms are going to end up being economically successful. In addition to that, we want to look at something that we're referring to as complementary zoning, which means that the zoning changes that we think need to be done actually go beyond the AVAD zone. Yes, we're going to have to make some changes to the AVAD zone, and I'm going to talk about those, but it's also going to be helpful to make changes to the Ringo's Village. If we could change the zoning there to bring in end users, like farm-to-table restaurants and stores that boast about the fact that they sell locally grown products, that's when it's going to be good for our farmers because they don't have to go very far to drop off their products. Similarly, when we talk to farmers, we found out that they have to travel all over creation to get services to help them farm. And when they have to do that, they're losing time. And when they lose time, they're losing money. So to the extent that we can use our highway zone and maybe tailor the zoning there to bring services into town, that will help our farmers save money. There's no one silver bullet that's going to do the job, but if we do enough of these initiatives, and if we get enough of them in place, then the whole system will actually help us help the farmers. And again, we're not just helping farmers, because if we have working farms here in town, then we residents who are not farmers get to continue to enjoy them. So, as I said, we started the project by talking to farmers and trying to understand what their experiences are and listen to their ideas and listen to their problems. But the very first thing we did is we produced a farm inventory. Actually, I thought we would have had one, but we didn't. So we said, okay, if we're going to make a farm inventory, what should it look like? And frankly, we thought we were being a little pretentious by suggesting that we produce the most comprehensive farm inventory any town has ever seen. But we figured, why not start there? Fortunately or unfortunately, we happened to be in the middle of a pandemic when we started this. And the municipal personnel were a little bit underutilized. So, I'm going to, give props where props are due. But Mary Ann Bushar worked with us to produce this farm inventory. She went through the farmland assessment forms, and she produced a farm inventory that we thought we were only dreaming about. It's amazing. It's a wonderful database that identifies all of our farms, where they're located, their lot and block, who's the farmer, who's the farm owner, what's being farmed. Is it feed crop? Is it food crop? Is it livestock? Is it horses? And if it's crops, what kind of crops? If it's livestock, what kind of livestock? If it's horses, how many horses? Because this is a project, let me stress, for all farmers. It was funny, when I started talking to farmers, a lot of farmers said, oh, you don't want to talk to me, you just want to talk to those big guys down the road. And I was like, no, I don't. I want to talk to the small farmers, the medium-sized farmers, the large ones, the crop farmers, the livestock farmers, the horse farmers. You're all involved because you're all part of the farming community. And this project is for everybody. So we now have everybody inventoried in this farm inventory. And it's going to be an amazingly important tool going forward, because it's going to allow us to see what's happening as this inventory gets updated. We're going to see what's happening to our farms as we put more and more of these initiatives in place. And if it's not going the way we want it to, we can change some of those initiatives. But a lot of the other initiatives, as I said, they came from our conversations with the farmers. And frankly, I was amazed to find out how many farmers are doing their own research, and you're all doing the same research. It's like you're all reinventing the wheel for yourselves. If you need to know how to change from one crop to another, or how to go from what you're farming to organic farming, or how to do environmentally responsible farming, or, you know, how do you get a new building approved? You're all figuring it out on your own. And it seemed to me like there should be a much more central location where farmers could get that sort of information. It's an absolute waste of time for every single farmer to go through the same sort of research. You're just duplicating efforts. So we started looking at ways that the community could then help farmers do what they were doing so that they could spend more time farming and less time on all this other stuff, because it's stuff that we could do as a community to help you guys out. So it's things like connecting, you know, we could help farmers connect with farm owners who need farmers to farm their land, or we could help farmers connect with end users who could use their product. We could create a directory of farm services or equipment that's for hire, so you guys don't have to go look for it. You just go to our directory and it'll be much easier to find. We could help farmers get easier access, or at least show them where their financial, if they need financing, where can they find it? We can help all of you through some sort of integrated marketing where we help market East Amwell farms in general so that you guys don't have to do it individually. I mean, some farmers have a sign at the end of the driveway. Other farmers come home late at night after a hard day in the fields and try to update their Facebook page. And none of it makes sense if we can help you guys do that sort of marketing. And doing some sort of integrated marketing system sort of leads into the first really big idea. We have a lot of ideas, but a couple of them are bigger than others. And this idea of starting to envision East Amwell as a destination experience. Let me explain that. Let's imagine that people who don't live here want to get away. One possibility would be for them to go to East Amwell, that lovely farming community, and spend the day or spend the weekend. And what would that look like? They would come here, they would go to a farm, they'd go through a corn maze, maybe they'd play with some goats, or they'd pick some pumpkins, then they'd go to some of our vineyards and our wineries, and then have a little wine, drive very carefully over to our farm-to-table restaurants and enjoy a meal that's full of locally grown products. And after that, maybe stay in some of our adorably quaint bed and breakfasts so they can get up the next morning and go horseback.
I can't. Someone wave at her.
She's not looking at anything. Trying to get her attention. Hold up. She's not looking.
She's not looking.
Somebody send her a text message.
Wait there. Just go on.
It won't let me go on to it.
Stop.
There you go.
Is she back?
Can you, Tim,
Yes,
okay, you got muted
Horseback riding.
when did
So
I get
you-
muted?
at horseback riding.
I got muted at horseback. So I was describing the destination experience?
Yes,
Okay, all right. So yeah, so you enjoy the bed and breakfast, you go horseback riding, then you go to the pick your own farm, pick all your favorite vegetables and fruits, you put them in the East Amwell farm refrigerator bag that we're going to give you so that you can take it all home and remember this lovely experience that you have and hopefully plan it again. Now, Now, again, I'm not talking about turning East Amwell into a carnival that just everybody descends upon. We as a community have to decide how much of this experience we want to develop. But keep in mind what other people may take the time to plan and get away from their hustle and bustle to come here and enjoy is going to be our daily quality of life. It's going to improve our quality of life if we can get farms and this whole palette of uses up and running and successful. It's going to help everybody, not just the farmers, but the residents who live here as well. And so that means we have to look at a lot of these different initiatives, including helping farmers develop value-added operations on their farms. And again, we have to do that in a way that's respectful of the residents that live around them. We can help farmers connect with the technical information that they need. We can help them with getting their local planning approvals. Education, farming education is going to be important. If we really want farming to last long into the future, we have to make sure that there are young farmers coming in to keep that tradition going. So we have a couple of ideas for introducing farming education. Incubator farms is one, a farm mentoring program is another. I'm also going to talk about possibly having a farm institute where farmers can go learn about some of the newest techniques that are out there, some of which Mike talked about, but also a place where farmers can learn how to run a business. I mean, not everybody does it naturally. Farmers are great at farming, but they might not necessarily be great at running a business. We might also be able to use that Farm Institute to introduce and excite younger people. If we have internships for high school kids and maybe area college kids who can come to the Institute and learn more about farming and maybe go into it as a profession. We can also help farmers who want to do more environmentally responsive farming, because the healthier the environment, the healthier the farms are going to be. And we also heard from a lot of farmers that wildlife control is a problem, whether it be deer or geese or coyotes. They are a problem for farming. And I understand that hunting is a problem for residents, but there again, that's a place where we as a community can help just advise residents about the importance of helping farmers control some of the wildlife that's wreaking havoc on the farms. But we can also advise the residents when farming is starting so that they're not always so surprised by it. And I want to point out that hunting is not the only way to control wildlife. There are other things we can do, like extensive exclusionary fencing programs, but that's like a whole nother lecture, and we can get into that. But the point is, we can bring that technology and that know-how to the farmers, and each individual farmer doesn't have to figure it out for themselves. So those are just some of the smaller initiatives that we're talking about. And this is another one of the big ones. We're thinking it might be very useful for farmers in our community to have a farmer's market with a resource center. And this is not your grandmother's farmer's market. This is completely different. As Mike said, current farmers markets are not good for a lot of farmers. The small farmers don't have enough product to utilize the current farmers markets that only pop up, once a week or once every other week. And the mid-sized farmers may have enough product, but they go to these traditional farmers markets, they sit there for a day. Sometimes it's a good day, sometimes it's not. If it's not a good day, they've just lost a whole lot of money and a whole lot of time. What we're talking about is a permanent farmers market with a staff where farmers can come, and they've got two options. They can either have a booth in the farmers market, in which case it just becomes another venue for them to reach their public and their customers. Or if it's a smaller farming operation, they could drop off their products at the farmers market, and the market, because it's staffed, would then sell their products to the public. And if we have too much product, let's say everybody delivers corn one week and we just have way too much corn that we can sell to the public, The farmers market staff would then have arrangements with other end users like restaurants and stores and cafeterias and whatnot to sell that extra product so it would get out there, so that farmers can spend more time farming and the market would do the selling. And by the way, I imagine this entire facility would probably be a nonprofit facility. We're not talking about a for-profit facility at all. The farmers market could do direct marketing for our community, our farm community, so that farmers can spend less time doing that. But attached to this would be a resource center. And this is where farmers would be able to come to get their questions answered instead of doing all of their own research, whether it be about a new technology or how to change crops or where to get the best financing. We could even use the resource center to help farmers maybe do some group purchasing. If they all need supplies, we might be able to get a better price for them if we coordinate. Another thing that we're working on, and this is actually already gotten started, is a web-based interactive map of farm stands, local farm stands. The county has been extremely gracious to allow us to use their GIS department to develop this interactive web-based map. And we hope to have it up and running in some fashion by April. And when it is, farmers will be able to go onto the website, fill out a form, identify the name of their farm, the location, the products that they're selling, the hours that the farm stand is open, maybe even upload a few pictures. You submit the form, and now there's an icon on our map that shows where your farm is and where your farm stand is. And then the resource center would market this, and that would help bring people to our local farms. We want to do something similar with services to help connect farmers who need services with places who provide services or people who have equipment for rent. Again, we think we can do that on a web-based sort of map. The resource center would do other things like promote the benefits of local farming. I don't think we've ever seen that nearly as much as we have during this pandemic. I mean, I, for one, never go to the supermarket if all I need is milk and eggs. I just go to a farm stand and get it. But we can do a whole lot to market the benefits of buying locally and buying from our local farms. If farmers want to get into agritourism, there would be people and information available at the resource center to tell farmers what their options are and how they could go ahead and do that. Same with if they want to convert some of their practices to more environmentally responsive farming practices, because as I've said, healthy environment leads to healthier farms. And the resource center would also be a place where we could help farmers deal with some of the conflicts that we know that they have to deal with when it comes to residents who don't completely understand what it means to be living next to a farm. Farmers could get help in those sort of situations from the resource center. Now, the resource center that I'm talking about, because it would be doing so much more than your average resource center, we're really talking about a much bigger operation than anything we're used to. And in all honesty, I can't tell you how it would be run. I do know that we have a number of options. One of the first things we have to do if we're going to do this is figure out, is this going to be a township facility or is it going to be a county facility? Or is it going to be something else? Is it going to be a public-private partnership? Are we going to bring in a nonprofit? Is it going to be a co-op? And again, this is not your typical co-op. If we went that route, there are some very sophisticated co-op models that actually generate investment income and all sorts of things to help sustain the operations. I don't know what it's going to look like. I can tell you what my own personal preference is. This is personal. I'm not speaking for anybody else on the planning board or the governing body, but I've been working for this for a number of months. And this is my thought. I look at the county fairgrounds, which we have here in town. And to me, that looks like an incredibly underutilized piece of property, except for a couple weeks out of the year. I see there being room for a farmer's market with a resource center and an incubator farm program all on that site, located on the highway, seems like this got an awful lot of advantages in my mind. But every option has pros and cons. And obviously, that one is no different. It's just one thought. If we want to have a farmer's market with a resource center, there again, we as a community have to decide what kind of facility is that going to be, how big is it going to be, and how are we going to run it? That's some of the work that we're looking ahead at. As I said, this would be a staffed facility. At the very least, we need at least a farm director who would be the person that takes all of these various initiatives and pulls them together. So when I say we as a community are going to help farmers find the information that they need, so not every farmer has to do their own research, it's the farmland director who's going to pull all that information together and make sure we have it in one place in that resource center. And then we need a farmer's advocate. That's the person the farmers are going to meet. If you've got a problem, if you need information, if you need to buy supplies and you want to do it cheaper and you want to see if a collective purchasing program that we've put together works for you, you come see the farmer's advocate. Farmer's advocate knows everything that the farm director has put together. You pose the question, the farmer's advocate helps you find the answer. You don't have to do it yourself anymore. Same with conflict resolution. You're having a conflict with your residential neighbor next door, you come to the farmer's advocate, explain the situation, the farmer's advocate takes it on. You go back to farming. They take it on, they try to help you figure it out. They try to settle it. The same staff at the resource center would set up these various educational programs that I talked about, the mentorship program, the Farm Institute, the incubator farm program. They would all be run out of the resource center by the staff that we would have running it. Those are some of the initiatives, large and small, that we've been talking about that we think could help make farming easier and more profitable for farmers. Many of them are going to require us to amend our zoning to accommodate it, to accommodate the initiatives. Many things, you know, if a farmer wants to put up a hoop house, we don't have local regulations for that. They probably have the right to do it under the Right to Farm Act, and they're probably going to get some attention from nearby neighbors. But if we have regulations for all these various initiatives, local regulations, and if farmers have the guidance they need, as long as they follow that guidance, then it should be easier to put those initiatives in place. And if we write those regulations, cognizant of the character that we want for this town and being respectful of the residents who now live around these farms because our farmland is so fragmented, then there's a good chance moving forward we're going to have more success with all of these various initiatives that we're talking about. We can also use our zoning, as I said, to promote things, end users that might come to Ringo's, service users or service businesses that might come to the highway, things like agritourism, things like value-added products that farmers might get involved with on their farms. We can produce ordinances for that as well. I haven't talked a lot about the horse farming, but we have figured out that over the course of the last 20 years, as more and more of these minor subdivisions get developed, it's affected the horse farming as well. Their trails that used to thread throughout the community have now been broken up, and it's really adversely affecting the horse community. So we really need a formal system to help bring that back, because we, as I said in the beginning, we need the diversity, and the equine community is part of that. And all of the various elements that we might think could contribute to a successful farmland destination experience which visitors could enjoy and which we as residents could enjoy on a day-to-day basis. Many of those elements could also be worked into our ordinances. So zoning is a big part of what we're doing, but it's not everything. A lot of these issues Mike already talked about. These are the issues that are going to be part of farming moving forward, and the new type of farming that we see for the future. We're going to need zoning regulations for all sorts of these things. One of these issues that I want to talk about in a little bit more detail is in the middle there, capitalizing on underutilized farm buildings. This came up at a couple of meetings because a lot of our farmers talked about the fact that they have these underutilized buildings that are being heavily taxed. And they want us to do something about it. And unfortunately, there's not a heck of a lot we can do about the tax law. But there are a couple of examples in other places that we might be able to get some help from. One of which is, frankly, real close by, Delaware Township. There's this really interesting former chicken farm that got an approval, and it was through use variances way back in the 70s, to convert from chicken farm to a commercial center. And, you know, we're not talking Wawa's, we're not talking Starbucks. There's just these small little businesses in there. Most of them are internet businesses. We've got so many people who are doing business on the internet. We've got people who are setting up Etsy shops and they're growing out of their houses. They need a place to work, but they're all very benign sort of businesses. And those are the types of businesses that are in this old chicken farm. So it looks like a bunch of old chicken coops minus the chickens, but there's businesses in there. Another example is Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I don't think anybody thinks of Lancaster, Pennsylvania as anything but a farming community, because the Amish are great farmers, but they are also great carpenters, and they make great quilts, and they have all these other businesses that have nothing to do with farming, but it still doesn't detract from the fact that Lancaster is a farming community. So we can look at these other communities, learn from them, and we can find a way to write an ordinance that allows farmers to sublet their underutilized buildings, get more income from them to offset the fact that they unfortunately have to pay more taxes for it. That's just one example, how we can use our zoning and change our zoning to help farmers. But we're going to have to do it for all of these issues as well. This is the slide that some of you maybe have been waiting for. What are we going to have to do to the AVAD zone? As I said at the beginning, this whole thing started because there was a recognition that residential development creates an inherent conflict with farming. And our current zoning, as Elena explained, has not led to more farms, but just the opposite. It's led to a fragmentation of our farms. It's led to smaller farms. We are going to have to make changes to the AVA district. And yes, the density in the AVA district is going to have to change, because residential development is just not consistent with farming. And that's not just my opinion. That's not just the opinion of people in the community. We now have studies like those from the American Farmland Institute that show in all 50 states, large lot residential zoning is harming farming. I am sure there are a few people listening here who are saying, absolutely not, we're not going to do that again. We've been down this road 20 years ago. You changed the density of the zoning, went from 3 acres to 10 acres. There was a major lawsuit and it divided the community. And I understand that. And more importantly, I remember that because I was part of it. That lawsuit had 2 plaintiffs. One were a set of farmers that represented the farmers here in the community, and the other one was a local developer named Bryce Thompson. And Bryce Thompson hired me to be his expert witness to challenge that farming, not because I wasn't supportive of farming or farmland preservation, but because the zoning that was put in place was not going to help farms. And that's the argument I tried desperately to make. If you zone for large lot residential, you are not going to get more farms. You're going to get more residential. And as everybody knows, we did not prevail in that lawsuit. But times have changed. 2 things in particular have changed. Now we have the studies. Now we have the proof that large lot residential zoning harms farms. And if that lawsuit were going on now, we would have those studies to back up those arguments, and we would have expert witnesses that are a heck of a lot better than I am. But the other thing that's changed is we've got 20 years worth of living with the AVAD zone, and we've seen what it's done to this community. And Elena described that very well. It has broken up the community. It's made our farms smaller, and it's made it more difficult to farm those farms. That's not to say that was done back 20 years ago was the worst thing possible. No, it probably made things better. Changing from 3 acres to 10 acres means we saw less residential development than we otherwise would have seen. We also did a whole lot of farmland preservation. We preserved more than 40% of this town, but that had nothing to do with the zoning. That was our investment. What we know now after 20 years of the AVAD zone is that it's not enough, and we have to do a lot more. And we have to do the kind of things that I've been talking about with all of these other initiatives. And we can do that. We can make that work. We can do that as a community, but it's a very big project. I'm going to talk one other thing on this slide before I change it. I do understand that there is some concern from some of the older farming families here. They want to pass their farmland down to subsequent generations. That's understandable. And we can make allowances for that through legacy zoning. But we really, really have to get control of the amount of residential development. And we have to support farmers in much more substantial ways than what we've done so far to date. But what we're talking about is an extremely big project, and it's going to take the entire community if we're going to see it succeed. The Township Committee and the Planning Board have their obvious roles in this. The Ringo's Committee can help us re-envision what Ringo's and the highway can be in order to bring end users and services to help the farmers into the community so farmers don't have to travel so far. The Environmental Commission, the Green Team, even the Board of Health can help farmers to better understand the value that comes with more environmentally responsive farming practices. We're going to need the Ag Committee, along with FOSPEC, to serve as our liaisons between the farmers and the rest of the community so that we understand the farmers' concerns and so that the farmers understand what we're trying to do to help them. And we also need our Historic Preservation Committee because, believe it or not, we have 6 historic designated historic centers in this town, 6 of them on the National Historic Registry. The first thing we have to do is care about that fact. And the next thing we have to do is invest in that, because that's going to become another interesting element that ties into the whole idea of East Amwell as a farming destination experience. It's going to make that much richer for people who want to visit here and for people who live here on a day-to-day basis. But you don't have to be on a municipal committee in order to be part of this farm project. If you're interested in it, we have something called the Farm Project Help List. It's a whole list of issues that we need people to work on, that we need help on. And you can just look at that list, find an issue that you're interested in, and we'll let you run with it. And if other people are working on it, you're just going to meet some neighbors who have the same interests that you have, and maybe you'll make new friends. And if there's nothing on that list that interests you, we still want you to come talk to us, because everybody has a talent, everybody has a skill and an expertise, and we're going to need everybody to make this project work. And if you have a particular talent, come talk to us. We'll figure out how to apply your talent to this project, because this project is that big. We need that many people. And later on tonight, we're going to open it up to the public, and we want to hear your comments, whether they're positive, whether they're negative. If you've got concerns, we want to hear those concerns so that we can address those concerns. But tonight, the farm project goes public, and it becomes truly a community project. And if we work together, I'm absolutely convinced we can do what's necessary to make farming economically sustainable so that we can all continue to enjoy working farms here in East Amwell. And that's my whole spiel. So Rick, I'm going to throw this one back to you and the Township Committee.
Let me know when I'm not loud, Krista.
I have to stop sharing. There we go.
I'm not gonna find, I'm not gonna find you. Oh, thanks.
Okay, Tam, can you hear me? Nod your head up and down if you can. Thank you. Okay, next we were going to open up for questions and comments from the Township Committee and the Planning Board. But we're going to call an audible here and actually go to the public because the presentations have gone on for an hour and a half, and I do want to give the public an opportunity to speak. So with that, let's open up to the public. We'll start with the people in the room here live.
Motion.
Oh, could I have a motion to open to the public?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. I will, but let me do the room and then we'll go to Zoom. That way we don't have to be flipping back and forth. So we'll start here in the room, since our technology is set up for the room right now. And what we will do is go down this row, up this row, down the third row. So we have some order here. As I said at the beginning, we will give each person up to 5 minutes on the floor. If you get to the 4.5 minute mark, Krista will let you know that you have 30 seconds left. Please, I ask you to respect the 5 minutes because I'm sure there are a number of people who want to speak. So we'll start at the beginning of this row. Anybody in this row want to speak?
Yeah,
Will you
I
speak,
would
please?
like to ask you all a question.
Could you give your name and your address, please?
Irvin Hockenberry.
Thank you.
I've only been on the same place since 1934. And my father was born here in East Amwell Township before that. So we've been in East Amwell Township my entire life. I live across the road in Mervyn Township. But I got about 60 acres over there in East Amwell. Now, how many of you have ever farmed? One guy farmed? Oh, two? Did you ever make a living?
Sorry, Bill.
No. So a lot of you don't know a thing about farming. And you're trying to tell farmers what they can do and how they're going to make a living. Well, you've got quite a bit to learn yet. Because farming is an everyday thing, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And we work night and day. I milked cows for 50 years, 7 days a week, never a day off. I know what it's like. Yes, I made a living for my family and myself. Then we did a little bit extras. But it's been a hard life. We got injured lots of times and still had to keep working. We couldn't stop because there was somebody had to do the work to take care of the animals. So this is why you people sit here, I imagine all of you making probably at least 100,000 a year. I'm not sure, maybe I'm way off, but no, one guy says no. No, and a lot of you have some big fancy homes here in the township, I imagine. I don't know. I haven't seen where you live and I don't care to. But we've lived in the same farmhouse and stuff for many years. No heat, no electric and everything else. And we survived and kept on farming. Now you come along and want to take the value of our farm away from us. And I think that's outright stealing. If it isn't stealing, I don't know what you'd call it. Because we do have some ground we could sell. I don't know, my son just left a few minutes ago because he's got to go to work. He works for the state park system, managing Spruce Run, Morris, and Hacklebarney Parks for maintenance. So he's got a lot of men and under him, he's got to be there to take care of them. So he's got a few chickens and stuff at home. He's now got a girlfriend that wants to have some animals and stuff, so we'll see what that goes to. And I hope it does, because I won't be here forever. I know that. But I've been here long enough to know a lot of you people don't know what farming is. Till you've done it for year after year and day in and day out, you don't know what farming is. And you don't know how to make a living out of it. I can guarantee you that you'd work a few years and you'd be belly up. So this is the way it is. That's all I know. And I was the first one in East Amwell to apply for preservation. And I got taken because of the politics. I was even threatened. And people meant it. They had asked me if I was wearing a bulletproof vest over the preservation program. And I didn't sleep some nights all night, but it never stopped me. I kept on working at it. And finally, the preservation program held up, because if I hadn't, there was one guy heading it up, I'm not going to name names, but I could, that was going to have the program printed, and the county lawyer was involved.
You have 30 seconds.
And
Irv, your time is up.
time's up. Well, I could go on for a while yet, but that's the way the program went. But if it hadn't been for me, it wouldn't have been a farmland preservation program, I'll tell you that.
Anyone else in this aisle like to speak?
Yes, I think you've hit on a lot of good points, and
First, can I have your name?
Oh, sorry, John McConaughey. My residence is in Hopewell, although we have farmland over on Orchard Road.
Okay.
So, I think that the plan hits on a lot of good points and a lot of issues that we have as farmers. The right to farm allows us to do a lot of things that you're hitting on, but if it can be memorialized in a way where the ordinances match up with the right to farm, I think it takes away some of the friction that exists between neighbors and farmers. But my question is, this is a big plan, so how does it happen next? Like, some of the things that are proposed, how does it get boiled down to a final solution?
Can we put Pam back on so she can address that?
How does it get done? It gets done step by step. The first thing we have to do as a community is to talk about which of these initiatives we want to undertake, which we want to make part of the community. I mean, do we want a farmer's market with a resource center and incubator farming? If we do, then the next step is to figure out how that happens. Do we want to support agritourism? And if we do, then we go ahead and we write the ordinances for that to make it consistent with the character of the town. But the next step is for us to get some direction from the governing body. What direction do they want us to go in? And then the planning board is going to start bringing our farm planning policy up to date. Once we have the policy up to date, then we put an implementation plan into place. It's a process. And it's a big project, so it's going to take a while.
You have anything further?
No.
Okay. Mr. Nance?
Yeah. My name is John Nance, 156 Sagamore Road. In this room, there's handful of farmers. We probably control of that 8,000 acres, 2,500 acres or more of it. Another 10 or 15 would make us control almost 85% of it. And the other is made up by farmettes, small farms, whatever you want to call them, horse farms, small horse farms, things of that type, that's just taking up the other acreage. The people that's in this room, 85% of what you've talked about has nothing to do with what we do. And that's probably the most disappointing thing I've heard tonight. The zoning change to go back to smaller zoning and cluster housing, whatever you want to call it, to where we don't split up the farms with the larger lots, you know, is a great idea, I think, in my opinion. But the nature of the farming practices in the Midwest, I grew up in Indiana, a large farm, I farmed here. I understand farming for 40 some years. You cannot help maintain the open vast spaces unless you help the larger farmers be more productive. You know, you talk about you want to preserve farms. Now you want to help us help do our buildings. We can't do anything with our preserved farm buildings. It's outside of agriculture, so it's like you can't make incubator type offices or anything out of them because it's restricted by the zoning deeds. So in your zoning, you want to stop development. I understand that, but when you preserve farms, you're over controlling what we want to do with those farms. My wife and I are selling a piece of real estate in another area. It's a multi-million-dollar deal. We would like to come here and buy more farms and do a 1031 rollover, but I don't know that I want to invest in that versus someplace else and invest in another farmland. It's very frustrating to be controlled and restricted in what we can do. You know, I believe in preserved land. You know, I'm surrounded by preserved farms. I mean, we bought that farm just because we wanted that, and we love that. But horse farms actually bring and build property value. Okay, you know, sustainable farming. You know, I'm involved in manufacturing of no-till products for no tillage. I help write the manual for no-till planning for SADC. You know, it's very difficult to not being able to listen to fruits and vegetable things is you know, fruit stands, this, that, whatever. I mean, that's 2 or 3 people that really do the major fruit stands or the farmettes. This minute you have 5 or 10 acre farms that do the fruits and vegetables. The large farmer is not going to, that's got $1 million or $2 or $3 million worth of machinery, going to go out and raise, put up one hoop building and try to raise vegetables in the wintertime. It's just not going to happen. We're larger scale than that. We can't go backwards because you've already invested into that type of equipment and everything. You can't change it backwards. The restrictions. What about the wildlife? Wildlife destroys a lot of land in New Jersey because the smaller the farms get, the more the deer affect all the perimeter of the field and stuff. You get down to the 5 acre fields, and you get no crops off of them. Okay, and now the insurance goes up because we have to pay more insurance because we can't get any yields off of them. We're going to turn in insurance claims for just churning acres over to do nothing with it. It doesn't accomplish anything. Okay, I had a little extra land to quit farming. I make just as much off of a few hundred acres as they did off of a large farm. So I mean, it's like it's not necessary unless you can control the deer population in this area. It's going to kill the farming more than any other programs you guys have talked about. The wildlife is going to destroy the farming in this community as we start developing more and more.
You have 10 seconds.
And you get more big, large developments. The deer come out of the developments, they go there to hide.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else ask one more question this row? We'd like to keep going through. If we have time when we're done, we can come back to you.
Yeah.
Anybody in the center row want to speak? Yes.
Vilma Hockenberry, I live 167 Old York Road, Ringgoes. Been married to my husband 63 years, so know a little bit about farming. Also been chairwoman of the New Jersey Farm Bureau Women's Committee. I did that for 4 years before I gave it up. But so I've dealt with people on the national level also. But my son suggested to me, with you wanting to encourage ag tourism, etc., farm trails through farms, his concern is about the liabilities for the landowner when you're having all these people coming on your farm. And the township should have to work something out as far as restricting the liability to the farmer when you have CSAs and all the rest of that. So it's a way of life. Farming is a way of life. And being out in the field chasing cows at 4 o'clock in the morning in the rain through a cornfield is no fun. I've done it.
Anyone else in the center aisle? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name's Jeff Bowlby. I'm a farmer, president of Hunterdon County Board of Agriculture. Listening to you guys' presentation here, I know I farm quite a bit of ground in East Amwell Township. I farm Mr. Hockenberry's ground. I do farm some of Thompson lands. Nobody approached me about any of these questions about what I would like to see happen here. You know, you all talk about the farm market, the this, the that. That pertains to a very small handful of people that want to participate in that style of agriculture. As far as your presentation, I'm like a mastermind guru in no-tilling. Okay, I've been doing it. I don't, plowing is recreational farming. Okay, now I can clean up more carbon out of the air, or more CO2 out of the air with 1 acre of corn that I plant than most of you guys do with woodlots on your properties. Now, I don't know where you all live, you know, but I take great pride in what I do. All right. A lot of these underutilized barns that we have in the area, they're underutilized because they're old, but we really can't do anything with them. But now, why can't you want to do something for the farmers? Why can't you guys give us our tax money back on those underutilized buildings like they do in New York State? Now, if they can do it in New York, we should be able to do it here. Okay. I got a few. In this room, there's a few other young farmers, you know, that are here with me. We are a testament that if you work hard and play by the rules, anything is a possibility. Okay. We're all successful. Okay. You know, we all do this for a living. So why, you know, if somebody really wants to do it and puts their heart into it, they can do it. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
John, did you want to speak?
Oh, yes. My name's John Ferens. I live on 53 Garbowski Road. On the Township Ag Advisory Committee, I didn't hear any of this going on at all. We've been going through a pandemic, and on the County Ag Development Board, the last meeting I was at, they were saying East Amwell was having a farm foreman. So I guess that's why I'm here. And I'm listening to Mr. Hockenberry ask a question. I mean, what is the reason for this meeting tonight? Is it to listen to fairy tales? Or is there an agenda that I don't know about yet? That's my question to the, from what I'm listening to.
Well, I'm not sure how to answer that question. I mean, we came in late, John, but the reason for the meeting was articulated at the beginning of the meeting, and there have been presentations made regarding alternatives that the Township Committee is considering, the Planning Board will be considering, that some of our other committees will be considering, and we're looking to get feedback.
Right now, everything I heard so far you're speaking about is already protected under the Right to Farm Act. And
Well, no, not everything that we've spoken about is protected under the Right to Farm Act.
anything that you do
We've been talking about a host of
agriculturally
issues that have nothing to do with the Right to Farm Act.
What was that?
We've been talking about a host of issues that have nothing to do with the Right to Farm Act.
Well, if you're farming properly, then the Right to Farm Act will help you with that. The
Correct,
worst
but
thing
we
you can
talked
do,
about the other end of the farming, the selling the products, for example, or having an advocate to assist farmers, or a centralized market where farmers can bring their products rather than having to go spend time in farm markets themselves. So we've talked about a host of things tonight beyond just basic farming.
well, that I've heard, I've been on the Township Ag Committee for over 20 years, and I've heard the same thing, like I've heard Jim speak with Rob Garrett coming with the co-op, and it's never really progressed, but we're not here for, why are we here? Why does everybody get together to help farmers, or what is the end result here?
If I had to summarize it in one sentence, it would be to do what we can to ensure that we keep agriculture viable in East Amwell Township.
Okay. And that's it.
Well, that's a pretty big task, John. When you say that's it, it's an awfully big task. Anything else?
Oh, so now, Mr. Hockenberry, you said something about land, or what did I? You said something about land or zoning or something?
Yeah, well, the preservation program, I'll go into that.
Well, no, not preservation, anybody, that's
For zoning,
zoning.
well, I'd like to know how many 50-acre plots is there in East Amwell Township? 10, 15? I don't know.
Well, we like to keep this to one person talking at a time. John has the floor, Mr. Hockenberry has the floor. I don't want this to become a free-for-all.
Well, I just asked Mr. Hockenberry, because he said something about zoning.
Do you have any more questions or comments?
Are you changing the zoning?
We don't know whether we're changing the zoning yet. This meeting isn't to make those kinds of decisions. This meeting is to explain to the public what we've accomplished so far and to get input.
Okay, that's the deal.
Anybody else in the center aisle like to speak? Yes, in the back.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Ames, and I live on Amwell Road. I just like to say I came into this meeting with a really open mind about what this project was, and I can't help but feel a little disappointed in how it was presented. In this room, it's the majority of the farmers, or on Zoom, that farm property in East Amwell. And I've heard terms like farming is getting less efficient, which couldn't be the further than the truth. And I'm hearing you guys are reinventing the wheel over and over again. And honestly, looking at your presentation, I feel like you guys are trying to reinvent the wheel. And then I hear words like, some people just aren't great at running a business. Some farmers aren't good at running a business. And I have to kind of say the same for you. I don't know which of you are farmers, and I don't know which of you are project management professionals, but I would say it looks like you guys are just not that great at running some projects, because when this email came out, it was really a project geared at East Amwell, but the people who farm East Amwell property, it's Raritan Township farmers, Delaware Township farmers, Hillsborough farmers, and a lot of them weren't invited to this forum. And I went out and I reached out to them. I told them to please come because this will impact you. And I think it's important that they, say their piece as well. And the only other comment I'll make is, a lot of things that farmers do are out of their control. So, for example, market prices, that's uncontrollable. Equipment repairs, it happens. That's really uncontrollable. They're very expensive. Weather, we can't control the weather, which directly affects our output in farming. But when I look at taxes, I feel like that's something that you guys control. So maybe that's a talking point. And labor. I mean, it's really hard to get people to come and do farm work. And you're talking about bringing in new farmers. I would really like to see, instead of saying we want more farmers, why don't you get people who are willing to work on a farm and be farm laborers? I feel like that's kind of where our issue is. I know a survey went out asking all the farmers, what can we do to help you? And I think, I heard feedback from many farmers. Their number one piece of advice for you guys was taxes. Please help with our taxes. And that wasn't even addressed in any of these presentations. So I'd just really like to understand what happened to that feedback.
I'll give you, there was a lot said, so I'll comment on 2 key points. One, we did everything that we could with our limited resources to publicize this meeting. There wasn't a group of invitees. We reached out to the distribution list that we had for farmers. We put it on our website. We put it on social media. We publicized this as much as we possibly could. So this wasn't a limited list of invitees. This was open to everyone. But we can't possibly reach out to everybody in the entire state of New Jersey. So to the extent that you're aware of people in surrounding communities that may be interested in this, you can either give us their contact information or you could reach out to them. In terms of tax, I'm sorry?
The tax assessor office has all that information, it'd be part of the survey that Busher did.
And we emailed everybody on that list that we had email addresses, but some of the email addresses were bad email addresses or they couldn't be read. So we did the best that we possibly could. In terms of taxes, we have no control over taxes. Taxes are dictated by the state. We don't have the ability to give you relief on taxes. So that's why it's not on the list, because it's not something we have control over. Are we done?
30 seconds.
Okay. So that's the answer on taxes. I think we're out of time, or just about out of time. Anybody else in the center aisle? Okay, this aisle? Francis?
Yeah, Francis Gavigan, 123 Wurtsville Road, small farmer, 8.86 acres. I've got cattle, I've got sheep, I've got berries, I got berry bushes. I've got Asian pears that the deer like to eat. At 7 o'clock this morning, I was dealing with frozen pipes and out in the barn. I never made my living doing that. I did it because I loved what I was doing, and I've got the body to show for it, like Mr. Hockenberry. But aside from any of this stuff is, there's the law of unintended consequences. When I bought my property in 1995, I had a conforming lot and I had a building lot. And I did not fight the 10-acre zoning because I thought that would benefit the community. What I did not realize was going to happen with the law of unintended consequences, that guess what? And you counted them. I'm one of the non-conforming lots. So if you want to do diddly or squat, you're dealing with, well, whatever the sliding density is, you're talking about variances, you're talking about legal fees, you're talking about construction. That's one other thing. As far as farm markets, we have a farm market that's vertically integrated and goes from the field to the public, and it's called Sweet Valley Farms. You drive down to Surgeonsville Road in the summer and you'll see the kids out there with the corn, or in the store, or right here on 202. What you're proposing is to negatively impact their farm business. The other issue is you can't control taxes, but maybe you can control the cost of construction or repairs, or even the slack that's cut to the farmers with their underutilized businesses, or whether or not they can have, especially on some that are non-conforming, that are not preserved, to where they can have commercial businesses. There are under the table ones, but they're not efficient. The 800-pound, and I'll finish with the 800-pound gorilla that's in there, in this room, is a dab smack in the middle of the ag district, is the ridge at Backbrook, 300 and some acres. And if you don't think that they're gonna come screaming and yelling, fighting and kicking, and all of that, if you wanna take the 300 acres that his investors are supposed to get their money starting back in the next couple of years, and take away his property rights to maybe go to 25, 30 houses if the golf course is not viable. The last thing is, I never heard anything about, I heard build out, but nothing about what is our development pressure. What was it, like 25 houses in the last 10 years? Would that put us into the middle of the century or beyond before we would hit that, ooh, built out scenario? There's a lot of stuff and there's a lot of resources and things like that. And full-time people, hire a director, do anything. Mike, you've got a small piece of property. Didn't you get the Kellys? It was like, what, 22 acres?
16 acres.
16 acres. Whoop, you'd be non-conforming. But you want to put hoop houses. That's fine. Are we going to be opening the door to a Den Hollander and having these giant greenhouses? We went through all of that sort of stuff. Be careful what you ask for. Be careful what you do. And first, like the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. And these people, the real farmers, the Kits, the others, Mr. Bowlby, that are out there, and I hear them at 9, 10 o'clock at night.
30 seconds, Francis.
30 seconds and I can speak. These are the people you're impacting. And, 25 acre zoning, all I heard was that is the goal and the intention. And a lot of this is to support justifying that. As a taxpayer, I'd like to know how much money was spent to develop all these studies and whatever, because I suspect our tax base is down a little bit, and I am out.
To answer your question, Francis, most of this work was done by volunteers and cost the township, nothing. Anybody else have any questions in this row?
Bill?
Mr. Dupasse?
Yeah, it's just, Bill Dufassy Farm on 190 Southern Mill Road, member of the Ag Advisory Committee. Used to be on the Ag Advisory Committee years ago, and also farmland, right. And left that with frustration. It was years of talk, nothing happening, everybody just talking in circles and so forth. So left and then came back to it, thinking that something might happen again. So far, it's the same thing, just talk. And a lot of the talk that went on this evening, I take great offense to. To be told we don't know how to run a business, don't know what we're doing. It's a shame that it had to be put out that way. And farming is one of the only businesses that buys retail, sells wholesale, and we do it making a living. So we're not done. And we don't need, for us to sell our product you talk about a farmer's market. How much parking are you gonna have for this tractor trailers? You know, I sell corn or soybeans, 800 bushel at a time on a tractor trailer. You're not gonna have parking for that. So it's completely silly what you're doing. Not gonna help any of us at all. The survey went out, nothing was done about it. Taxes are a big issue. I think something can be done by somebody. All the surrounding states, they got it done. Why can't you get it done? Another issue that's hurting us is land being taken away by other entities. One being DNR Greenway, taking good prime farmland away from us, letting it go to waste, go to weeds, and those weeds, they mature, they blow across for miles, contaminate our fields.
Yeah.
Oh my
Nothing
God.
being done about it. All those entities should be stopped buying prime farmland. If they want to ruin land, do it up in the Sauerland Mountains, do it away from people, away from us. This past year, I had to burn off 2 good hay fields because of weeds. And that all comes from right up the road. They don't maintain it, they don't mow it. There's laws in New Jersey about weed control. They completely ignore it. And this township does nothing. So for us to make a living in that manner is harder yet. So it's taxes, people like that surrounding us, animal control, a lot of factors, but we do it. So I don't call us dumb. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, can we go to the people who dialed in on Zoom?
Okay, how are we gonna do this? Let's see.
Let me know when they can talk and then we'll.
Should I just go page by page? Joanne Beck. You just have to unmute yourself.
You're muted yet.
You just muted yourself. You have to unmute yourself.
Because we're gonna mute all of it. I have to ask to unmute them.
In the bottom left-hand corner, there should be an icon, mute and unmute. If you click on that,
On the top of the screen.
Okay. There she is.
Yeah.
Is it going
now?
yes.
Can you just state your name and your address?
Yes, Joanne Van Dorn Beck, Amwell Road. I grew up in East Amwell Township. I currently live in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. However, a couple of issues. Number one, the big thing for farmers is the infrastructures. And East Amwell Township was one of the big issues for the farmers because when Kuberts wanted to move into East Amwell Township made it too difficult for them to put their business there. So East Amwell Township put the farmers behind. Currently, I take my brother's tractor heads and bring them out to Myerstown, Pennsylvania to be worked on. When farmers have to send their equipment and their parts out to Pennsylvania to be worked on, that is inefficiency. And that was caused by East Amwell Township. It was also interesting hearing that you would consider the potential of using the fairgrounds facilities for one of your programs. Do you realize how difficult it was for the fairgrounds to get into East Amwell Township and to do a lot of the work that we have done at the fairgrounds? East Amwell Township has been a challenge to work with. You mentioned about the need for education and for the farmers to do things educationally. Do you realize that we have an extension service that works very closely with the farmers and helps them? We have a lot of these facilities. They are in existence. You are the ones who are trying to reinvent the wheel that we have already. I understand that, you know, it would be nice to preserve, it's nice to preserve the land. The reality is you need to preserve the farmers so that they can keep the land under active production. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Preserve the farmers, listen to the farmers, that controls 85% of the land.
Raritan Headwaters?
Hi, everyone. I'm Christy MacDonald. I'm the science director at Raritan Headwaters Association. We're the environmental organization that works to protect land and water resources in the Upper Raritan. And the Neshannock River region is a big focus of ours because a lot of their resources here are impaired. We are very excited to be contacted by your mayor, Rick Wolf, and also Tamara Lee to talk about this innovative project. It sounds like it's an ongoing project. There's still a lot of outreach and community involvement that's going to be needed. But when we were first told about the project, we were really excited about how cutting edge and innovative it is for farmers to potentially be involved in something like this. So to me, it sounds like it's really just the beginning of a bigger ongoing project. And as an organization that's very concerned about the condition of our water, also very much supportive of farms, wanting farming to be sustainable and more ecologically sound. This project has so much potential. Anyway, I just wanted to introduce myself, and I think we'll be communicating in the future and working more with your township. We already work with you on well testing programs for private well owners, and we do stream monitoring programs in your municipality. So I think there's just so much that we're excited about to hear that farmers want to work with, to make their practices more economically sustainable and environmentally sustainable. Thank you very much.
David Beach. David?
Yep. Okay. Thank you. This is Dave Stalen. I'm on Rainbow Hill Road. Been here about 29 years, and we just have a teeny little horse farm. But what I heard was the intent is to make agriculture more viable in East Amwell. And I heard the farmers say that their issues are animals and wildlife, weeds blowing into their fields, that they need more farm help, and they need to be able to get farm equipment repairs and things like that done more cost effectively. So I really wonder, how does a resource center and how does more infrastructure, which means more cost, how does that help farmers to be more viable? And then I'm also still very unclear as to what you're suggesting about zoning. Thank you.
Pam, would you like to respond to his question?
Admittedly, a lot of that has to be worked out. With respect to the zoning, I think all we've really said tonight is that more residential zoning, it has been demonstrated through now official studies. It's detrimental to farming. So what we need to do is to do other things that make farming more profitable, so that farming the land is more profitable than subdividing it. With respect to some of the things you have to talk about, yes, we understand that these are issues. You know, the wildlife are issues. We don't have all the answers, but we know these are issues that we need to tackle. And that's what we're basically phase one. The point was to identify what the issues are and to put an overall strategy in place to make it happen. But you know, phase two is then going to be trying to make all those things happen, and it's going to be piece by piece. It's as I said, it's a very, very large project. We don't have all the answers right now. We're trying to identify what the problems are and what some possible solutions are. We know that the outreach is just starting. I've heard a lot of people say we haven't talked to farmers. It's not that we haven't tried. You all were very busy during the summer. And outreach is not over. It's going to continue throughout the project. The project has only now started to become a community project, and we're going to get more community involvement. And hopefully with that, we're going to tailor the project needs of the community. So that's the objective.
Do you have anything else, David? He muted himself.
No, that's it. But I really think that going back to what Francis said about the unintended consequences is a biggie. And if we first focus on things like wildlife control and making the fields more efficient, so there's more of a crop output, and making it easier to get things like farm help, those are fundamental to farmers, I've got to believe. Thank you.
So I just want to let everybody know on Zoom, I'm going to go down my page and get to everybody. So if you just be patient with me, I have 3 screens I have to navigate.
You want to do it in alphabetical order, Krista?
It's
Okay.
hard to do it like that.
Whatever.
Laura Tesseri.
Yes, hi, thank you. I'm Laura Tesseri, director of a local agricultural nonprofit, North Jersey RC&D. And I'd just like to give the farmers of East Amwell credit, as many of your farmers have been working hard, working to improve soil health through cover crop and no-till, working on nutrient management and manure management, better grazing, all to steward the land and to be more resilient. North Jersey RC&D, we have agricultural specialists on staff. We also work closely with NRCS, so the staff out of your local service center in Frenchtown, all to connect resources and people, helping to try and make conservation more achievable. So I just like to make the farmers aware here that we're currently working with grant funding in the area, in the Neshannock, the Backbrook, the Alex Hawken watersheds. And we look to assist farmers by providing financial and technical assistance towards conservation practices. We have a no-till drill available for rent and rotational fencing available to borrow. In fact, we've worked with quite a few of your farmers over the past 7 or so years and welcome working with additional farmers in the future. And I just want to thank the farmers for their investment in soil health and in stewarding the land. As more intense storms and rains come, that resilience that soil health builds is going to be needed. That better drainage and better drought resilience is going to be important really for the farms, but for the community as a whole. It was interesting to listen to this meeting. There are an awful lot of big ideas. I just want to emphasize my appreciation and thanks to the local farming community. Thanks.
Thank you. Jim Robinson.
Thank you so very much, and good evening, and thank you for the very informative presentations this evening and excellent comments from members of the public. I'm Jim Robinson, and I'm a commercial real estate agent in Hunterdon County and on the executive board of the Hunterdon County Chamber of Commerce. And knowing about the business aspect of farming that Tara and the woman in the center back row mentioned sounds like a great program for the Hunterdon County Chamber Foundation to explore to help the farmers in East Amwell and throughout the county. I also served as a longtime planning board chairman, so I thank you for this public process the town is undertaking and very much appreciate the opportunity to comment. I learned a lot about farming tonight, but my focus tonight is on a different aspect of farming. The Chamber of Commerce was a partner in the County Economic Development Office in producing the study of the economic impact of tourism in Hunterdon County. East Amwell truly is a farming community, and tourism and farming are not mutually exclusive. They can complement one another. They can help contribute to the success of local farmers. Briefly, the advantage of tourism to a town in Hunterdon is ratables, jobs, showcasing local products, and revenue for other local businesses in addition to farmers. According to the study, the tourism study, the Hunterdon County visitor is more likely to be what they call affluent mature and affluent families. Those are segments with high disposable incomes. A quote from the study is, "The value of visitors with more disposable time and income cannot be overstated." And the uses that the study talks about, the tourism uses that the study talks about, are food and beverage, in addition to the obvious restaurants and cafes and things like that. Wineries, distilleries, breweries, and wedding venues were specifically mentioned. And they obviously have a link to Hunterdon's agricultural base. And of course, that would be a benefit for your residents as well. I learned a new term from Mike today, cidery. I had never heard that term, but that too seems like something that would be a great tourist attraction. Lodging, including B&Bs, is something that promotes tourism. Recreation and entertainment, including festivals and shopping. One of the quotes that I thought was very interesting from the study was, not surprisingly, Hunterdon County has happy visitors that often repeat the experience. I read that. I wasn't sure if that happiness is related to the wineries and the distilleries and the breweries, but it's possible. And another interesting thing from the study was that tourism in Hunterdon is less seasonal than in other parts of the state. So the revenue is constant and stable. It's year round, not like summer at the shore or winter at the mountains. And East Amwell is ideally located to accommodate tourists to the Hunterdon County attractions such as golfing, excursions, scenic weddings, wineries, the county fairgrounds, the Reddington festivals, Lambertville and Frenchtown, antiquing visits, and all the great things that Tamara mentioned were possibilities in East Amwell. And now to get to a more specific point, Tamara mentioned the highway and making East Amwell a destination. I agree with that. And if I could speak specifically about the 11.5-acre parcel that I have listed that fronts on Route 202 and 31 and Wurtsville Road, actually catty-cornered from the municipal building, and that's owned by Shirley Hirsch and her sisters, and I think she's going to speak too. That property has been listed for a while. The uses on that property are, the permitted uses on that property are single-family homes, agricultural uses, farms, farm-based businesses, public parks, subsidized accessory apartments and affordable housing development, antique shops, cell towers, microbreweries are a permitted accessory use. Bed and breakfasts were removed as a use a few years ago. And as you can imagine, there's been very little call for most of these uses by potential buyers. Inquiries have been for affordable housing, breweries, B&Bs, and event venues.
You have 30 seconds.
Okay. What I'm suggesting is the property along the highway. You know, we love keeping the farms and the bucolic and the pristine nature, but the section along the highway, I think, can be put to better use that will generate revenue for the town and helping the farming community. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank
the
you. Mary Ann's iPad. I don't know where she went. It disappeared. Okay. Lisa, do you have something? Do you have a question? No. Frank Creek, do you need to?
Good Good evening. I'm Kathy Greek. My husband Frank is sitting next to me. We have been in the valley for 28 years, and I think you would all refer to us as gentlemen farmers. We tried farming. We are located on Lindbergh Road. We were at 28. We are now at 36. We subdivided 15 years ago. We have 40 acres now. Couple of things come to our thoughts. The soybean and animal feed corn farmer is not going to welcome visitors to their farm for any reason. We will share with the community that we have been personally sued by someone passing through our farm. We welcome visitors. We have trails through our farm, and we were personally sued because they encountered a tool that was left by God knows who on a trail, and they won. So liability, which was mentioned in the group chat many, many times, absolutely has to be paid attention to. The farmers that seem to be sitting at the municipal building right now are the ones that are incredibly important. They have been in the community for a very, very long time. Their pension funds are in their land. Their families may or may not want their farms when they are ready to retire, and that needs to be considered. Land values are important. Thank you.
Connie H., do you need to address? Keith?
Yes, Keith Kaufman at 126 Manners Road. I'm really here listening and learning and appreciating folks speaking out. I've only been here for about 18 months, took over property and house owned by David Kanak and Paula Kanak, who I'm sure some of you folks may know. So I'm gonna go back on mute because again, I'm in a learning stage here, and this information is extremely helpful to me. Thank you.
At Wahab? Moving on.
Looks like she tried or something. but
Yeah,
nothing's
she's not
coming
coming on. Can anybody raise their hand if you want to address? Because I'm not seeing anybody else. Christian Bench. I gotta find you. Here you are. Okay, go ahead, Christian.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Christian Bench. I'm an agricultural specialist with North Jersey RC&D and USDA NRCS. I'm also on the CADB board for Hunterdon County. While I do commend East Amwell for caring about agriculture, I do want to express the gaps that were left out in this presentation were huge. And, you know, I think we should certainly poll the farmers and on the important things such as what everybody mentioned: taxes, insurance costs for agritourism activities that are in this, you know, euphoric plan, preservation rules and regs that limit a lot of these, you know, activities to happen. So it seems like it was the cart before the horse, and not a lot of research was done. There was no feasibility study done. You know, no market, you know, can the market and the consumer sustain such a plan? That was not done. Just a lot of poor research went into this before making this presentation, and it should be noted. You know, as Laura Tassieri mentioned, North Jersey RC&D has many programs that are focused in the Shannock watershed for cover cropping, no-till farming. And, you know, as I drive across the landscape in East Amwell, you guys should be really proud of yourselves. You have done a lot for no-till and cover cropping in this area. and you should definitely be commended, like Laura said. So as we move forward, there's of course going to be more programs to focus on a lot of regenerative practices that were outlined in this plan tonight. And if any research was done, or any of these committee members came to USDA or North Jersey RC&D to ask how many acres has been, applied of cover crop or no-till farming, residents would see that a lot is already being done. And that's kind of my point tonight, as all the farmers kind of expressed a lot of my points tonight, regarding taxes and labor issues. Those are the important things. There's certainly inadequacies in agriculture itself as a business in New Jersey, and we have to face that farming in New Jersey is a struggle. And this plan presented tonight is not going to do anything to solve that. While like I said, I do commend East Amwell for doing such a plan and caring about their farmers. I think a lot more needs to be done before presenting anything like this to residents or to the public. The other thing I wanted to mention too, young farmers, we have several star young farmers in East Amwell. One of them's a bunch of them are in your room. Kit Crisafoli, Jeff Bolby, Jared Weeks, they're all there. There's your young farmers. So what would you do to help them today? That's what you got to ask yourself. Poll them,
Are you finished, Christian?
I'm finished. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just in all fairness, one comment that you made was remarkably unfair. Tam spent literally hundreds of hours doing research. What is chirping? No.
I don't doubt that, sir. I do not doubt it. But where was it in the presentation? Where was the consumer research? Where were the acres? What was the main land use in the area? I would say it's hay. Does anybody know that besides the farmers that are in there?
Yes, we do. If you'll let me finish, Christian.
How? Yeah.
Can I finish? Or
Sure.
let me let you finish. Tell me when you're
No,
finished,
it's okay.
Nelson.
No, go ahead.
Come back on mute so we're not. I just want to make a general comment. Christian's statement that research didn't go into this is remarkably untrue and remarkably unfair. Tam spent hundreds of hours researching this. She talked to all sorts of experts. And we're here to help. We're not here to try to offend people. We're not accusing people of not knowing how to run their business. People are taking this in the wrong way. But for example, Mr. Dufosse, when he sat here and interviewed for the Ag Advisory Committee, told us that he's investing a lot of money into farm equipment and only breaking even. That sends out a clear message that something is wrong. And yes, we up here at the dais, the people who are giving presentations may or may not be farmers. But that doesn't mean we don't know anything about farming. Vince Lombardi never played professional football. Doesn't mean we don't know anything about farming. I personally have spent a lot of time trying to learn about farming. I own a 139-acre farm. I live in the middle of that farm. I do get on a tractor. I own a tractor. Do I farm for a living? No. Jared Weeks farms my farm. I watch what Jared does. I talk to Jared. I ask a lot of questions. I bought my farm from Fred Reinerson. Many of you know Mr. Reinerson. After I bought my farm from Fred Reinerson, Fred continued to live on the farm. And the farmers, many of whom are on the call tonight or here in the room, would come to Fred's machine shop and talk to Fred about farming. And I would sit in on those conversations to try to learn. And I just sat there and listened and learned. We are here to help. We're not here to insult. We're not here to impede. This is to try to improve agriculture. A lot of work went into this. If anyone in the room knew all the answers, then as Mr. Hockenberry said, you'd have that big house and you'd be making the millions of dollars. I don't think anyone in the room here is going to stand up and say, I know all the answers. I know certainly anyone at this dais or anyone who made a presentation tonight is not going to stand up and say that we know all the answers. We don't. But what we're trying to do is help people find those answers. That's what we're trying to do. You have to take taxes off the table at this point. East Amwell has no control over that. At some point, could we try to go to the state? Yes. Is now the time to go to the state when the state is facing a massive budget deficit? Is borrowing billions of dollars? No, that's not the time to try to get the ear on a proposal to reduce taxes. It's not going to be successful. So we have to fight the battles that we think we can win. And that's what we're trying to do. I see a lot of awfully unfair and nasty chatter going on this Zoom chat, largely coming from a couple of sources. And when you're considering the comments from those sources, you should think about the potential motivations of trying to protect their own businesses, etc. Not necessarily looking out for the welfare of all the farmers in East Amwell, but trying to protect their own territory. And we're here to do what's best for the township as a whole and not to do what's best for one or two particular people. But the notion that this presentation was slipshod, was not well thought out, that a lot of effort didn't go into it, is untrue and unfair. The three people who presented tonight put a lot of time into this. Tam is a professional planner. She didn't get paid a nickel to put the hundreds of hours into this. Mike Mills, who is a farmer, who understands farming, is not getting paid a nickel to put all the time into this. He's doing this to try to help his fellow farmers. Mark and I have put a lot of time into this. We're not getting paid. We are doing this to try to keep agriculture viable. So the goal here is, if you have comments, we want to hear them. If you have ways to improve things, we want to hear it. But comments that are derogatory about our motives or our efforts are not fair. There are no hidden motives here, and the efforts have been immense. And with that, I'll let Krista return to polling whoever wants to speak.
Shirley?
Hi, I'm Shirley Hirsch, 6 Copperfield Court, Freehold, New Jersey. My 4 sisters and I are property owners in town. Our parents purchased lots in the 1960s, and over the years they developed relationships with some of the people in town and learned from the residents about what they valued for their town. My parents developed the service station on the corner of Wurtsville Road and Route 202, and my dad took great pains in trying to maintain the colonial look of the town, and maintaining the character of Ringo's has always been important to our family, but so is seeing the town grow and flourish in ever-changing times. The culture of small towns is changing. And as more and more people are choosing to move out of big cities and into the suburbs, they're seeking communities with services and amenities to meet the entertainment, social, and business needs of its residents. Upon reviewing the Hunterdon County reports, it would appear that East Amwell is underrepresented in restaurants, bed and breakfasts, or hotel facilities, as well as other sought-after amenities. Our 11 acres on the northbound side of Route 202, which currently only offers a view of an embankment, seems a perfect place and opportunity to expand into the agritourism wave of development that is being enjoyed by many local towns such as Clinton, New Hope, and Frenchtown. A microbrewery, a winery well placed and designed, is a perfect example of a destination for folks looking for a day in the country. Why not let East Amwell reap the financial benefits of such a development without adversely affecting its residents? It is my family's belief that the current zoning along a 4-lane major highway is too restrictive, and we believe all could benefit by a more progressive and realistic zoning destination. And I've heard a lot of talk about taxes, and with some rezoning, it could bring in more ratables. So I ask you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Is there anybody else? I'm not seeing anybody else.
Okay, Krista, could we see if any of the planning board members who are joining via Zoom have any questions or comments?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Could I have a motion to close to the public? All in favor? Okay. Could you see if the planning board members, I'm trying to reconnect, I got disconnected. Can you let me in, please? All right, never mind, I'm coming in.
I'm the planning board. Marty.
I'll just ask any member of the planning board.
Does any of the members of the planning board have any comments?
Yeah, they just take yourself off mute.
Doesn't look like it.
No one from the planning board has any comments?
No.
Okay, anyone from the township committee? John?
No, I'll just say that it's been very educational for me, and I appreciate the folks in the room who provided comments tonight. Really appreciate it, as well as the folks on Zoom. So just, thank you for coming out and expressing your views.
Sarah?
Yep, sure. So, I'll warm up here. Okay, so full disclosure, this is probably one of my first 3 meetings as the one of the newest members of the Township Committee, John and I. So like John mentioned, this is a huge learning for me. And I just want to repeat a few things that Rick stated because I took it very, very close to heart. I don't think the intent of anyone in this room, and I certainly, I think on behalf of myself, as well as I'm sure some of my colleagues up here want to repeat that I don't think in any means were we trying to insult or say that farmers were not intelligent by any means. Trust me, that is not my intent nor my colleagues. I think I am not a farmer. I would say we dabble in it. We have chickens and goats. We're trying to teach our kids to have good responsibility and do chores. So that's some of it, but we have a lot of respect for farming. And you know, that was never the intent of anything that's been stated today. I was trying to jot down quite a few notes as we went through this. I think I heard some major themes in here around zoning, wildlife management, taxes, as Rick mentioned a few times, really out of the control of this group of people, but I did hear that mentioned quite a few times, and labor and the need for labor. I was steadily watching the Zoom comments, and for the individuals in the room that you couldn't see that, there was a lot of comments on the Zoom around who was contacted, and I know a few of you who spoke actually asked who are they were contacted, and could they see a list of people who were contacted? I don't think we would want to share that necessarily, but I know Tam and Mike and Tim and the rest of the planning board did an extensive amount of work on this. And I think by all means, if you were not contacted, then you know the individuals now to whom to contact, right? So you are here, you've spent 3 hours of your time either in a Zoom or in person on a Thursday evening. So by all means, if you were not contacted or if your voice was not heard, I would really encourage you to get in touch with the people that are sitting here right now or that are on the Zoom. Because as Rick mentioned, we are here to help. We are here to try to do the right thing for the township, and we want to hear from you. So again, I'm here, I'm learning, I'm very much learning, humbly admit that to anyone, and really excited to try to do the right thing, whatever that might be. And as Tam has mentioned, and as Mike has mentioned, I think we're in very much the preliminary stages of this and really trying to understand what we can do better. Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, I'll keep it fairly brief. It's 10:30, it's getting late. I would just first like to echo what Paris said. Nobody here, I don't think meant any offense by any of the comments that they made. It's just simply, a way to, at least in my mind, try to start the dialogue, if anything. We're not, again, I know this has kind of been presented, and I think taken to be some sort of concrete plan or proposal. At this point, I don't think that's the case, at least not how I interpret it. At this point, I think it's really just preliminary. We're trying to take the feedback and talk to people and see what's going on. Now, I personally have had very little involvement in this project, but I do know that everyone involved has put a fair amount of time in. But with that being said, I mean, ultimately, it's not going to be successful even if we were to move forward with anything unless we can get feedback. But we're just, as Tara said, very few of us, if any, are actually farmers up here. So, to the farmers out there and anybody else, by all means, please give us whatever feedback you have, whatever comments, whatever concerns, whatever you guys think the issues are. Because ultimately, we can sit here and speculate, but that's not going to be helpful if we're not addressing what's actually happening in the real world. So, with that being said, yeah, I'm good. Barbara.
Yeah, just to follow up on what Tara said, not all the farmers were contacted because we can only contact those that were in our database or whatever. So anybody that knows any farmer that wasn't contacted, please give us their names, their email addresses, so we can get this distribution list out. And that includes the farmers from Hopewell and Montgomery or wherever that aren't in, they're not listed as farm owners, but they do farm the properties. So we'd love to add them to the database so that we have this mass email that we can get everybody in the loop and keep them up to date on what's actually occurring and as this project progresses. But also, I just want to thank Pam, Elena, and Mike for the presentation, and everybody else for their commentary. Very much appreciated, and I think we just have a lot of work to do. So thank you.
As some of you know, I do sit on a tractor. I've been on a tractor for 6, 8, 10 hours at a pop. It's exhausting. It's not romantic. It's not like it appears on TV. I do it to relax. I would not want to do it for a job. I would not want to do it for a living. It's a very, very hard way to make a living. I watch what Jared and Tracy do. They do go day and night, 7 days a week. They are not just crop farmers, they are dairy farmers, and they're involved in a host of other farm-related activities, including activities intended to keep or to get young people interested in farming. They work very, very hard. I'm a lawyer by trade. I work for a large law firm in New York City. And we get these young lawyers who come in who are starting at over $200,000 a year, who are complaining about how hard they're working. And what I say to them when they complain is, you get 4 weeks vacation a year, just give me 2. I want you to come work on the farm for 2 weeks. If you come work on the farm for 2 weeks, you'll never complain about your desk job again. And I can tell you, I don't complain about my desk job. I would not want to do what Jared does. It's nice for me to get on a tractor on a weekend to do it for relaxation. I would not want to have to do it for a living. It is very, very hard work. That said, the goal here is to find ways to keep agriculture viable in East Amwell. If we continue down the road that we're on, I don't think it's going to stay viable in East Amwell. I think that's becoming very clear. We do not have a wealth of young farmers. Most of our farmers are older farmers. The farmers who are farming are not making a lot of money. As Pam said, most of them have to work second jobs. In fact, quite often the farming is the second job. Their primary way of making a living is doing something else. Hay and alfalfa, I'm not sure how long those are going to be good cash crops. You're not shipping hay and alfalfa to California. Hay and alfalfa are sort of like aggregates. They tend to be used locally. It's not economically viable to ship them long distances. And the horse industry in New Jersey is not thriving, and a big consumers of hay and alfalfa are horses. And we know people who are involved in the horse industry in a very big way, and they can tell us repeatedly that the horse industry in New Jersey is going downhill. They are trying to work with the state to turn that around, but who knows if it's going to be successful. But I don't think farming is going to stay viable in East Amwell growing corn, soybeans, hay, and alfalfa. I think it's going to take more than that over time. And that's what we're trying to help people sort out. The residents in East Amwell have made it clear to us that they want to keep agriculture viable in the Amwell Valley Agricultural District, which comprises about 2/3 of this township. The residents love living in the AVAD, and they love living in an agricultural community. What I have a difficult time seeing is how taking farmland out of production for housing developments, or even as Mr. Dufasse said, what happened on Cider Mill Road is going to advance the continuation of agriculture in East Amwell. Let's start with the people who would buy the homes if you start allowing residential developments on our farmland. The people who buy these homes invariably will not understand what it means to live next to a farm. And they're going to complain. They're going to complain about the odors. They're going to complain about the slow-moving farm equipment on our roads. In fact, I've driven my tractor on our roads. You take your life into your own hands on some of these roads driving a tractor. You have your turn signal on and your arm out, and they're still trying to pass you. And our roads are narrow, they're windy. These are not roads to be trying to pass farm equipment. People will complain about dust. People will complain about spraying. People will complain about culling the deer, the shooting. As the mayor, I get these complaints all the time. They're shooting near my house. They're going to complain about your farm structures blocking their view. I had a neighbor complain that Jared's corn on my farm was blocking their view, that I shouldn't let Jared grow corn on my farm. Okay, these are people who buy houses and don't really understand what it means to live in an agricultural community. And then what do? Well, if you want to know what they do, talk to some of the farmers. Talk to Ann Del Campo. Talk to Mike Mills. Ask them what these people do. They sue. They sue the farmers. Are they successful? 99 out of 100 times, no. But in the meantime, the farmer is spending money on legal fees, is distracted from doing what they need to be doing. So having residential developments in the middle of farmland is not a good idea. And it doesn't only impact the farm on which the residential development is built. It impacts the surrounding farms. So it's not as simple as saying, well, I'll hive off part of my farm for development. It only impacts me. It doesn't. It impacts your neighboring farmers. Our roads, they're not set up for significant amounts of traffic. Our roads in East Amwell are already overstressed. More residential development in this township is not going to make that problem any better. It's only going to make it worse. One of the two largest or three largest complaints that we get are the speeding on our roads and the volume of traffic. So having additional cars, households that may have 3 or 4 additional cars on our narrow country roads are not going to help agriculture and are not going to help the community, period. Our ecosystem. As you know, our ecosystem in East Amwell Township in the AVAD is a rather fragile ecosystem. We have a lot of birds that are, I'm going to say this in layman's terms, they need to be protected. We have a lot of streams. It's an environmentally sensitive area. Large residential developments only stress environmentally sensitive areas. The state figured this out. When the state went gung-ho on solar, and by the way, I'm a big fan of solar. I have a net zero house. I'm sort of a tree hugger. When the state went crazy on solar, the state was supportive of putting commercial solar fields on farmland. Look at the state's latest draft of its master energy plan that the BPU put out. The state now strongly advises against putting commercial solar fields on our farmland. Why? Because we have plenty of other places to locate more solar than we'll ever need in New Jersey. And it doesn't make sense in the most heavily populated state in the nation to take our limited amount of farmland out of production. And that's particularly so in East Amwell Township, where the majority of our soils are good farming soils. Soil on my farm, on John Perring's farm, on the farm next to us that John and his family farm, is some of the best soil you'll find. Plus, we happen to sit on an aquifer. So taking that soil out of production, how does that help farming? You already have farmers cannibalizing each other for the available farmland. How is it going to help agriculture continue in East Amwell taking valuable farmland out of production? I don't see how it does that. In my view, the key to enhancing the value of farmland in East Amwell isn't to open it up to residential development, but rather it's to make agriculture more profitable in East Amwell. If agriculture becomes more profitable, our farmland will become more profitable. Currently, we actually have a tailwind. The wind is at our back right now, and we should take advantage of that. What do I mean? Well, before COVID hit, there was this movement starting, building significant momentum for farm to table, locally grown foods. Go pick your own. Get to see where the food you're eating is grown. Organic. That was gaining significant momentum. I have over 40 clients in my practice that are billionaires. A number of those clients who never got involved in anything other than commercial real estate are now investing in farmland and in organic farming because they see a great future in that. When COVID hit, that only made the tailwind stronger. If you have any doubt, talk to Jared. Ask Jared, what happened to demand when COVID hit? He farms my farm. I can't even get stuff from him. He's sold out. It's put an even stronger tailwind. Now is the time for us to seize the day. to do what we can to improve agriculture, to expand the product line. Your neighbors aren't eating hay. They're not eating alfalfa. For the most part, they're not eating your soybeans. And if they are, they're not your soybeans. They're coming from somewhere else. They may be eating your corn. We certainly eat a lot of Sweet Valley corn. But you're not going to make a living just selling corn. So what about other crops, like Mike was talking about? Try to make that more viable. Restaurants in New York City, when they reopen, they are hungry for locally grown food. There are markets available. The people who do the Christmas trees, you can make a lot of money taking your Christmas trees into New York City, because a Christmas tree that's $60 here is $300 in the city. So we're working on these alternatives, and all we're asking people to do is have an open mind, to work with us. We're not attacking anybody. We're not criticizing anybody. We're not belittling anybody. But we are trying to help. And I see people in the audience shaking their head no. What that says to me is, you've closed your mind. You're not open to anything that we have to say. And that is your
say. You're telling us we're not economically viable. We might not be a $1 million house like you, but we're doing okay. And we love it. It's a lifestyle for us.
But are you adverse to doing better?
I'm happy where I am. I'm not looking to get rich off this. I'm not looking for the $1 million. I don't drive a BMW.
You are, but maybe everybody's not. Maybe other people want to do better.
You're not listening to us. Like, this
I am
group here is
listening.
telling you one thing.
You're out there preaching that we're not gonna raise corn and soybeans and wheat and this, that thing, to raise hay, and if we had more horses, this, that thing. You're preaching farmettes and the little bitty farms and shit. We're not gonna be doing that. You're not even listening to us. We control almost all the ground. You're talking about your programs are all around a few people on farmettes is what you're trying to develop. And I commend you for it. You did a hell of a job at putting that program together. But in supporting those type of people, but you didn't promote or listen to what the real farmers had to say. And you can't sit there as the mayor and tell us that we can't raise corn and soybeans. We'll still be doing this 40 years from now, and you'll be here and gone, and these farms will still be raising corn and soybeans. It's like you think it stopped in the Midwest. It's not stopped. We're going to get more efficient. We'll get more on it. We'll have automated machines that'll do it for us, and
I'm sure 40, 50 years ago, people sat here and said, you don't know what you're talking about. We'll still be raising cows 40 or 50 years from now. And you're not.
I understand it.
You're not. You said you'd still be continuing to raise peaches 40 or 50 years from now. And you're not. Things change. And it's unfortunate that you don't want to better yourself, but that's not necessarily the view of everybody.
I gotta go.
That's not necessarily the view of everyone. There are people in this community that do want to do better. And that's who we're trying to help.
I agree, and I think there's aspects that we would like to be open to, and maybe some parts of your plan would be beneficial, but it's just, it's very hard when we have this meeting and we voice our opinions, and then at the end of it, you just say, oh, the crops you are making aren't viable. Like, I don't think you're seeing the volumes that we move and the demand we have for hay, straw, mushroom farms, things like that. I mean, it's, I think we're open to it, but there's parts of it that I think we would like to educate you further.
And we're open to that, and we want to be educated, but I can tell you that when I sat there in Fred Reinerson's shop and I listened to farmers come in and talk to Fred, there was a common theme, which is our kids aren't going into farming. There's no money to be made. Mr. Dufasse sat here when he interviewed for the Agriculture Advisory Committee and told us he's breaking even. That's on recording. That's what we heard, that he's breaking even. I would think
I'm
you
breaking
want to do
even
better
because
than that.
the cost to run a farm is far too high. You know, 2 hours from here, the farmers are paying a year what we pay a quarter in taxes. That's what we're up against. It's not the crop, it's not what we're doing, it's not any of that. It's the cost of being in business. So taxes are a big item. You know, all machinery dealers, 2-3 hours away. We're in a pocket over here.
But we're trying to bring
Okay,
more of that
you know
here.
what? The only way to stop it? Build houses. Get rid of the farmers.
But like during the presentation,
You know,
we tried.
it's cost.
But Bill.
And you guys don't
Bill,
understand it.
Bill, I understand costs. One thing I understand is numbers. Okay? And what I also understand is that if
So you're telling us we have to change.
I'm not telling you anything at this point, but what I am doing is sharing my views. I listen to your views. I would hope that you'd be willing to listen to mine and my perspective. And what I am saying is, it's not just taxes. Because if you look at the taxes that most residents are paying on their properties, it's $8,000 or $10,000 or $12,000. If you had the same farm in Pennsylvania, maybe it's $3,000. So are you telling me that $7,000 or $8,000 a year is making a huge difference in the profitability of your business? And if the answer is yes, then there's an issue with how the business is being run. And one thing I do understand, you may tell me I don't understand farming, you may tell me I don't understand a lot of things, but one thing I do understand is numbers. And one thing I do understand is businesses. And one thing I do understand is how to operate a very efficient business. That I do understand. I learn a lot from the people that I work for, and I've worked for some of these people for 30 years when they weren't billionaires. So I've learned a lot over the years. He worked on Wall Street for longer than I've been doing this. He understands numbers. He understands businesses. Tara heads distribution for J&J. When you head the supply chain, you have to understand efficiency. She understands efficiency. We're trying to help. You can sit here and say they're a bunch of desk jockeys, they don't know what they're talking about, and you can tune us out, and that's your prerogative. All I'm asking is just open up your mind a little bit, listen to what we have to say, give us a fair hearing. If after you give us a fair hearing, you say they don't know what they're talking about, that's fine. But all we're asking for is a fair hearing here. We are trying to help. We're not retired. None of us working on this project is retired. We all have full-time jobs. We're spending massive amounts of time on this project because we want to keep agriculture viable in East Amwell. And what got me turned on to this were the hours that I spent in Fred Reinerson's workshop listening to farmers, including John's father, including a few farmers who are no longer with us. They've passed away, who were doing this for decades. Talk about the future of farming in East Amwell. And there was one common theme in all those conversations, which is none of them viewed the future of farming as a bright future. None of them sat there and said, this is what I want my kids to do. We want to change that, and we want you to help us change that. So reach out, share your thoughts. We're very reachable. Tam is incredibly reachable. And let's work together on this. But putting houses, I'm sorry, Bill, but putting houses in East Amwell.
I just made a sarcastic remark.
Okay, I took it seriously. That's not going to solve the problems. That's only going to make it even more difficult to farm. And I hear you about the issue with the property across the street from you. I hear you. I don't know what to do at this point. It's not a township property. I thought they were reaching out to you to try to work this out. They told me that they hired somebody specifically to deal with these kinds of issues. DNR Greenway told me they hired
If
somebody.
they told you that, they're lying.
Well, then I will re-engage with DNR Greenway. Because I agree with you that we should not have a property that is going to weeds. The weeds are blowing across the street and they're damaging your crops.
It's against the law.
Well,
two of the folks that just left are big in the DNR, the McConnells are very involved with DNR. So
look, DNR has done a lot of good things, but on the other hand, they have to be respectful of the farmers who are
Is
around.
Christian Ben still on?
No.
He visited them some time ago, and they pretty much told them where to go on what to do with weeds. They're doing nothing.
Well, then we're gonna have to deal with that because they don't have the right to let their property go
You're
to a
exactly
state
right, they don't.
where it's effectively destroying the crops, your crop. I heard you lost a customer, a significant customer, your son told me, because your hay got tainted from the weeds across the street.
Correct.
So I thought they were taking care of that. I did put them in touch with your son. I thought that was being taken care of. Tonight's the first I've heard it's gone nowhere.
Nothing.
But I don't know about these things if people don't tell me.
I've been viewing this for years.
But I haven't been here for years. This is a new group. You have to teach us. We are trying to be proactive. But if you don't tell us, we're not necessarily going to know.
Years ago, when I was on the Ag Advisory Committee, I mentioned this. Nothing ever gets done.
But we weren't here.
Okay.
I can't take responsibility for what happened years ago.
I'm glad you're here now because now you can do something.
And if you talk to people who have reached out to me with problems, I do.
This sounds good.
I
Go
do.
for it.
Jared?
Having flashbacks to 8th grade here. I think what you guys up there need to understand is that farming isn't just like everybody does X, Y, and Z. You know, what you had said in your presentation about, you know, all the stuff you do, that's Greek to some of us, just like what we do is Greek to some of you guys. So I think what the impression I got was that the farm market and you know, all that stuff that Tamara brought up, that was just kind of the low hanging fruit. That's the stuff that they see that they probably go out there and buy that stuff. They participate in that portion of agriculture. They're not out combining corn or milking cows. I mean, so I think it's important for the farm side to understand that they're not, my impression anyway, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't view it as that's what they're trying to force us to do. It's just the sector that you guys probably feel like you can help the most on right off the bat. I think it is important to consider the guys who are just growing grain, and I mean, I milk cows, talk about being stuck in the past. You know, I don't want to do all that stuff that he said in his presentation. I wouldn't enjoy it. So I just think it's important to keep that in perspective. You know, not everybody wants to have a farm market, and not everyone can participate in a farm market. So if there's a way you can help just the farmers like Jeff or Christian or Bill or Kit, who are just out there riding the tractor all day, doing, you know, an astronomical amount of work, keep that in mind. Maybe there isn't a way that you can help with that. And if not, then that's okay. But if we're trying to change those guys into growing microgreens, I would love to see Jeff do that, but I don't think it's going to happen. But if it's something that can be done to cross-promote agriculture and not doing anything to negatively affect them or making it so, you know, they're zoning 25-acre lots and all this stuff, then, you know, it can be good for both sides. I'm kind of involved in both just because of, you know, some of the stuff we do. And I've learned a lot from it. And not that I've necessarily wanted to, but I've kind of had to. But not everybody's in that position. So I think that's where the frustration on their end is coming from. They feel like you're trying to tell them that what they're doing isn't viable. And it is, it's just extremely hard in this state and this county to do it. So I see both sides, I guess, but I think there's middle ground. If you guys are going to pursue this, you know, maybe there's some of these guys that are just farmers that would want to contribute to it so that you're not marching off in the wrong direction. When you come back, they're going to want to, you know, burn you at the stake.
Like I am not a farmer, but I live on a farm. I'm involved with farming very intimately, but I don't do the work. I work at J&J too, so I'm a desk person as well. But being connected with a farmer, I see both sides. And I come into this with a project management experience, being a certified PM, and I just see, you know, these big players, these are your SMEs. When you're talking about a farm director or a farm liaison, like if you try to recruit that position would take years of experience to obtain that knowledge. These are your guys who have all of that knowledge that you want to tap into. And I haven't seen that really happen yet. And sure, it's because a lot of them work 355 or 50 days a year. We don't even see them, so it's probably hard to get in touch. But, you know, these are your resident experts. And I would like to see them help you guys learn how to make this successful instead of kind of being told, let's do this, this, and this. Like, that's just my thought from not being a farmer and seeing this presentation.
You're raising a finger.
Yeah, someone wants to speak. Go ahead, Christian.
I think he's still on mute.
Yes, I mean himself.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, Mayor Wolf, one of the problems that we face with regenerative agriculture as a whole, it requires to be very diversified as an agricultural unit. And that means, you know, integrating livestock in with cover crops and hay and cash crops such as corn and soybeans. And not every farmer has the knowledge for livestock or field crops. Not everybody can grow 200 bushel corn. Not everybody can, you know, raise 50 head of beef cattle. That whole model of regenerative farming, that's where it kind of faces challenges from a community-based level. And that's why you have farmers who have specialties such as Kit growing very high quality hay, or Christian growing high quality hay. You have Jeff Bowlby, who's an extremely good no-tiller and can grow 200 bushel corn on very marginal ground. Yes, this ground is considered of statewide importance and on the books. However, you know, the truth behold is that it is tough ground to grow a cash crop on. The guys that survive have found that niche, their own niche, and have done quite well and have, you know, risen above market depression, deer, those type of things, and they're innovators. So I just want to get across that there's a niche for everybody. However, not every farmer is good at it all. And that regenerative agricultural system requires a more integrated, diversified agricultural background that is hard to achieve. So it's attainable.
I'm going to wrap up shortly. I just want to say one or two more things. Some of what I'm hearing tonight reminds me of what I heard in my law firm 8-10 years ago. There were a group of us in the firm that believed that my firm, which is over 500 lawyers, was being run badly, that it should be run more like a business. We weren't really successful in persuading our colleagues of that. Our colleagues said, we're lawyers, this is a law firm, we know how to run it. We're not going to bring in some non-lawyer and tell us how to run our law firm. Well, our law firm declined to being the 47th most profitable in the United States because these folks refused to take the advice of non-lawyers. Some of them have been practicing 20, 30, 40 years. We know how to run our law firm. We're lawyers. Well, ultimately, a group of us who by that time were generating a significant amount of revenue in the firm managed to take control over the firm. And we brought in somebody from Goldman Sachs to run our firm. We brought in a non-Free Frank person to run the firm. And he ran the firm like a business. And man, did a lot of my colleagues complain. In fact, a number of them left. Well, fast forward today, 6 years ago, we were the 47th most profitable. In 2019, we were 12th. And my guess is when the 2020 results come out, we may well be in the top 10. Because some of us at least understood our shortcomings, that while lawyers are really good at practicing law, we're not necessarily good at running businesses. And all I'm saying to you tonight is give this a chance. We're happy to work with you. We're happy to take input from you. We want input from you. But there's always room to improve, and that's what we're trying to do. And if you're comfortable doing your corn or soybeans or hay or alfalfa, that's fine. We're not looking to change that, and we'll do what we can to help you do that more efficiently. Maybe that is getting someone to locate here so that you don't have to go 2 hours for your parts. I don't know. We'll have to figure that out. But I can also tell you that I subscribe to Lancaster Farming, and my wife will tell you I read it religiously every week. And there are farms, particularly in Pennsylvania, small farms, 20, 30 acre farms, where the farmers are doing quite well for themselves, doing things that were in his presentation. I suspect they're making more money on 20 or 30 acres than some farmers are making on multiples of that in terms of land. So maybe you're not into these different types of crops right now, but maybe if we can gather some momentum on that in East Amwell, maybe you'll change your views. Who knows? If you don't, that's fine. But maybe. But the goal here is to be helpful, not to be an impediment. So just give us a chance, come to it with an open mind. You know, personal attacks are not going to advance the cause. And I'm seeing some of this on the chatter going on here, where we're being attacked personally. There's no call for that. We're trying to be helpful here. So just give us a chance. And with that, could I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Okay.